The December 16th, 2020 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I'm Kate Flavin, Public Information Officer with Sedgwick County. We're streaming this morning's meeting live on KPTS Channel 8. We are also on Sedgwick County's Facebook page and YouTube channel, and you can also watch this meeting on our website, sedgwickcounty.org. Commissioners, we have plexiglass barriers between them. Staff are still socially distanced here in the room. We are wearing masks unless we are at the podium speaking. And we'll also utilize video conferencing and the conference line as well to make sure that our meeting runs smoothly. During yesterday's Commission staff meeting, Commissioners received an update from EMS operations and fire consolidation. They reviewed a letter related to census deadlines and timelines, and then they provided information and input on federal funding or potential federal funding and stimulus information. And then we received an update on COVID-19 vaccines. This morning, we are happy to announce that we have our partners here with the Kansas African American Museum with us joining us this morning. And so I would like to bring the Executive Director, Denise Sherman, up to provide us with an update.
Good morning, Denise. Welcome to the Commission meeting.
Well, good morning. Good morning, Chair Meitzner. Good morning, Commissioner Cruz, Commissioner Glasscock, Commissioner Howe, and then Commissioner Dennis. Can you hear me okay with the mask on?
If you want to take it off, it might be easier for us to.
Okay, is that
hear
better?
you.
A little clearer?
If you're comfortable doing that.
I am.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to allow the Kansas African American Museum to share an update of our activities this past year. And we know this has been a challenging year for everyone. The Kansas African American Museum entered 2020 with a branding statement, "We Are Culture." And this set the stage to provide a culminating experience of people, pride, and place. In doing so, TCAM positioned itself to encourage others to celebrate the richness of the African American experience and serve as the cultural hub for innovative collaboration, familial and historic storytelling, thought-provoking exhibitions, and interactive continuous learning centered around the African American experience. And we started out 2020 with a bang. We had a very robust first quarter with our initial community event with MLK, Martin Luther King holiday, our Heritage, Our Hope, which was celebrated with our partners at Chapel Hill United Methodist Church. From there, we moved into our first major exhibition for the year, which was My Love, My Dream, My 40-Year Journey by Charles Davis. He was a retired school teacher here in the Wichita Public School System and an art teacher, and had a very wonderful exhibition that we had for the first quarter. Went into Black History Month with various programs, and with that, we celebrated with our community partner, Tabernacle Baptist Church, with a This Is Love film premiere with Rudy Love and the family. And this was an event that was provided free for the community, celebrated their long journey in the entertainment business, and also gave a lot of insights to our own community. Our children, or our youth in the community, Real Men, Real Heroes, spent a day presenting at the museum, a day of the Living Museum, with information and interpretation of the education that they learned with African American legends. And so you will share in a clip that we have here shortly, watching them do a little bit of their presentation. We finished out the first quarter with We Were There, the African American Women in the Suffrage Movement, in partnership with the League of Women Voters, along with Delta Sigma Theta and other community groups. And this was a really wonderful event that lasted several hours at the museum, where not only we had guest panelists from across the state share information about the celebration of the women's suffrage movement that we were doing this past year, the centennial, but also we talked about the African American women and their role, which was not widely known. We also joined with the census representatives for 2020 census and voter registration, and so used that time really well the first quarter to get messaging out as to why it's so important to be involved. From there, we entered the era of COVID, and the museum was not open to the public for several months. With that, though, we continued with programming virtually with going online. We established our TCAM Online Engagement Center, which provided virtual programmings in history and education, and that was also available to the public at no charge. With that, we developed a cultural awareness training, which Sedgwick County Department of Corrections has participated in this past year, and we just finished up our season with that, and we'll be renewing and moving forward next year. Our cultural awareness training was also offered to several organizations in the community, and they joined us as we move forward with sharing the importance of understanding cultural awareness, enrichment, and competency, along with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that goes hand in hand. We moved into our third quarter with a relaunch of our Cowrie Shell Leadership Society, which was presented with a cultural event, A Taste of Nigeria, and that was in partnership with our Nigerian Association and Newman University. And this wonderful event allowed people to, and it was a very small group, to experience part of our culture and our history. With that, we opened up another exhibition, Shades of Strength and Beauty, which was an open call to African American women and women of color across the state of Kansas, or those who had a Kansas connection, to share their interpretation of how women, in their viewpoint, display strength and beauty. And that was our first opening of an exhibition after COVID, and was well attended. Several other virtual events included DOCM sit-in programs, Kinship Revealed with Dr. Sharon Cranford. We also continued with moving forward with our second phase of Defining Black Wichita, which, if you recall, was here last year. We did our first phase, which was 1870 to 1930, that talked about the area here that's right in this local area here that was the early settlers of African American community. And we came in with our second phase this year, 1930 to 1970, and that event, that exhibition will be closing out this week, and then we will come back next year with our last phase of that, which will be 1970 to present day. So we encourage you to stop by if you can and see that. The focal of the Defining Black Wichita for this year, 1930 to 1970, is the Dunbar and McAdams area. We also participated in Say My Name, Exploration of African American Identity, as a panel discussion virtually. You'll see a little bit of that as we go through the clip. And then also we moved forward with several other panelists with our Senior Wednesday groups. We finalized the year, or culminated the year, with our big signature event, which is our Tribute to Trailblazers Hall of Fame. And in the past, we have offered that event for the past 20 years, an in-person event, which normally has the attendance of about 350 people. And the museum recognizes African Americans who have made significant contributions, not only locally, regionally, but nationally. And as they are inducted into our Hall of Fame, we do celebrate their accomplishments. This year we had to pivot and retool and went virtual. And while that was quite a journey and a process within itself, it turned out to be a wonderful event. This event was broadcast locally with Channel 12, KWCH, along with on our Cox Cable channels in November. And with that, we reached households. We reached over 30,000 households in the Wichita area, as well as the Topeka area, as well as Independence and Coffeyville. We also streamed this event the same evening through various platforms, and then it's also available on our website. This 1-hour event, as we are still gathering numbers from social media and also from repeat viewing, has really expanded our reach, which was the goal, and we believe that this platform served us well. When you think of 30,000 households at 2.5 persons per household, that's quite an accomplishment from 350 people. And if you have not had a chance to see it, it's available on our website on the front page, and you can just click on it, and it's 1 hour, and I think you will find that it is very informative, not only as we were weaving in information about local history, but also the accomplishments of our inductees. which were Sam Ford from Washington, D.C., who was born in Coffeyville and raised in Independence. He's a national correspondent and chief bureau for ABC Channel 7. Also, Jadetta Everett, who many of you know is a local leader here with Delta Dental. Carla Eccles with KMUW. And we posthumously honored Hattie McDaniel. And I think I called everybody.
Dr. Charlotte Smith.
Thank you. Dr. Charlotte Smith as our rising star, Doris Kerr-Larkin's rising star. And that is a new category that we installed last year as we honor the legacy of Doris Kerr-Larkins, who many of you may know her story. She was instrumental in saving the location that we are currently in as with the Calvary Baptist Church, which is now the Kansas African American Museum. And if you, again, are not familiar with any of the stories or the persons that I shared with you, we invite you to come to the museum and learn more. Or you can go to our website and you will certainly have an opportunity to get information. So with that, I would like to go ahead and have us play the video. And this will just kind of sum up what we've done this year. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you. Today, the Kansas African American Museum embarks on a new vision. It has been a wonderful opportunity to celebrate and learn more about the richness of the African American experience and its indelible influence on the American culture, tradition, and language that continues to define our country today. This transition showcased a broader representation of our rich and vibrant culture, from a sole focus on the archival documents to one of highly sought-after collections and interactive continuous learning centered on highlighting the African American experience. We serve as the cultural hub for innovative collaboration, familial, and historic storytelling of our Kansas African American Museum.
You just gave everybody all kinds of names. And they were names that were given to you that were usually not very flattering, but people embraced them.
Because my daughter is full black, so I've always had, I guess, a crush on Latino women.
And just the equal opportunities to live life in peace.
Sacrifice, a word and a way of life that many African Americans have come to know. And it was no different for the early African American settlers that were seeking a new start in the state of Kansas. Several families made it a reality by establishing a vibrant community in the core of Wichita, which was referred to as the Black Belt.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 20th Annual Trailblazers Hall of Fame celebration. I'm Felicia Rolfe, your MC for the evening, and tonight we celebrate and showcase some of the most talented professionals in the nation.
Hattie McDaniel went from home on Wichita Street to Beverly Hills.
And still, we rise. Over the years, the Kansas African American Museum has faced many challenges and uncertainties, but has always found a way to work collaboratively to press through and find solutions. The Kansas African American Museum, we are culture.
Very nice.
Thank you. Any questions I can answer?
Yeah. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I was just so excited to, I think the production of this was spectacular. Obviously the content was, but when I was watching it at home by myself, I was blown away. And the stories that were told, just listening to Janetta talk about being the first black dental hygienist and how she was told that she, shouldn't do that kind of thing. I mean, hearing those real and raw stories told in a really exceptional way really captivated me. And I know 30,000 other households as well. So the other thing that I just want to point out is the expansion of the board. I serve on this board, and I'm so excited that this board, with your leadership and Ebony and everyone else on there, the expansion of across the state of Kansas, reaching out to everyone in the state of Kansas because it's the Kansas experience, right? And so I think that that's really to be commended. Also, when I started 2 years ago, the difference from TCAM to now, I mean, it's explosive. It's awesome to see just the work that's gone into this. And so thank you for being here and showcasing what you've done over the past year, because it's really impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And we appreciate all of the work that you do for us as well, and the support. And really everyone, the support has just been tremendous, and it really gives us wind beneath our wings to help continue to move forward and press on. And there is so much more to learn and share.
Yeah. And Denise, thanks for your leadership on this, and to the board and your recent accomplishments in this rather difficult year to accomplish a whole lot, but you've done it. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're the better for it.
There you go. All right. I don't see any other
very
comments. So thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, and I would just like to make a few more announcements. Our drive-through sampling site will be closed tomorrow and Friday as we transition over to the Extension Center. So folks who would like to be tested or sampled for COVID-19, we will not be offering drive-through testing at the old Armory location. However, we will be at the Extension Center on Thursday and Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30. Those appointments are not necessary at the Extension Center, and walk-ins are available. And once again, that address is 7001 West 21st Street, so it's 21st Street and Ridge. On the agenda this morning, we have an elections update, a resolution to establish public hearing details for the Aerospace Industrial District. You'll have an amendment to the Interest Bank Arena Management Agreement. Then we'll review the Community Investments Plan. There's a resolution to establish an Economic Development Incentives Policy. We'll have the CARES Act conversation, a review of bid board items, and then you'll have a compensation update from the county manager. So with that, Chairman, I will hand the meeting to you.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday, December 16th Board of Sedgwick County Commission meeting. Thank you, commissioners, for being here. And just for the public, Commissioner David Dennis is joining us by Zoom and by audio. So he will be in attendance virtual. So with that, and welcome everybody that's watching on KTPS and other venues that we have. With that, I'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
Invocation to be observed by a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Glasscock? Commissioner Dennis?
Present.
Commissioner Howell?
Present.
Commissioner Cruz?
Present.
Chairman Meitzner?
Present. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public agenda.
Commissioners, I understand that we did not receive any emails up to the deadline last night, and nobody has signed up to address us, so there's no public agenda to approve. So, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
New business. Item A, elections update.
It looks like the famous Tabitha Lehman has joined us. Welcome, Tabitha.
Good morning, Commissioners.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. It is so good to be here. I
Yeah.
cannot even express.
Just
Just the whole concept of getting out of the house is a big deal for me right now.
Well,
Not
we're-
being at
we're
the
glad-
cancer center, the house, or the hospital. This is.
We are very glad you're here.
Anna and I are going to kind of tag team this. And so please forgive us if we have a little awkward transition times. And if you want to speak at a specific time, just let me know. All right, so we wanted to just give you kind of a 2020 post-election report. And again, I'm just going to say how happy I am to be here. Also happy that you can start seeing a little hair growing back. That's a big deal in my life right now. It's amazing the things you find to be very, very encouraging when you've gone through something like cancer.
Well, hair is something.
It is
not that,
wonderful.
Not that big a deal to me, but I understand.
I think I have more than you. Look at that.
Well, we could be
Sorry.
twins. We could be twins.
All right, we'll just jump in here.
Okay.
As you all know, the general election of 2020 was one of the most challenging elections that our office has ever faced. Sorry. We had 83 polling locations and 18 early voting sites. On Election Day, we had 322,381 registered voters, and we had 225,771 ballots cast. We had 87,382 ballots cast by mail, 67,382 in early voting, and on Election Day, for the first time, we had fewer voters than we did in early voting or ballots by mail, was 62,624. And then we had 8,387 provisional ballots that were counted, or cast, I believe, actually, for a turnout of 70%, with our early voting and by mail totals taking up 68% of the actual turnout, which is the highest we've ever had. And of course, as we were coming into it, we weren't sure when we were seeing all those high numbers if that meant we were going to get slammed on Election Day or if that just meant everybody was voting early. And it seems like it kind of evened out well because we were able to social distance very well at the polling places. We did not have long lines at the polling places, and that just helped us be able to take care of voters much better on Election Day. These are some comparisons to 2016 and 2017. Obviously, our registration numbers continue to go up, which is a very good thing. And you'll see that our ballots cast, this is the most ballots we've ever had cast in any election in Sedgwick County. And we did top both 2012 and 2016 for our voter turnout numbers. I would mention that on our provisional numbers, if you remember from canvassing, 4,300 of those provisionals were people who had requested a ballot by mail as well. So that was higher than we would normally see, but we kind of expected that given the tone of this election cycle. We had, this is a comparison of the number of voter registrations that we processed after the primary before the general, and you can see that comparison from 2012, and it's voter registration and new advance. So you can see that comparison from 12, 16, and then 20, and you can see there was quite an uptick both in advanced balloting and new registrations that our office had to process. For just a point of reference, pretty much a registration takes between 2 to 3 minutes per registration to process, and if you are a temp or someone who's not been in the office, it can take longer than that. So that just gives you a little bit of how much time was spent doing that compared to previous election cycles. And of course, this was done without my presence in the office. And so normally I like to take up the slack where needed and, help with registration or help with advanced, and I couldn't be there to do that. So my staff worked incredibly hard this year. They always do, but they worked really hard this year. We just thought you might be interested to see the breakdown of where ballots were dropped off at the drop boxes. So these are those numbers. Some of them I expected to be higher, like for instance at Park City, I kind of would have expected to see more dropped off there, but we were not successful in being able to place that within really the city limits of Park City. It was out at our fire station, and so I think that's why those numbers were lower. They probably would have been higher had it been within Park City proper, but we really wanted to have it on a government facility so that we could keep it as secure as possible. And we just were not able to secure a government facility within the city limits of Park City. So there's some of these that I think we could have had better if we had been in a better location, but we did the best that we could. But you can see that particularly the one at the courthouse was extremely popular. There were days where it was being emptied 4 and 5 times a day to make sure that there was room for more ballots. And you can see like it in Derby was very well received. Orchard Park Rec Center was very well. Mays was very well. You can just see these numbers. So this was our first time doing a mega vote center for early voting, which you all know. Using INTRUST Bank Arena has been a dream of mine since I became election commissioner, but it's never been feasible. And then, of course, it was the year that I couldn't be here. So my staff very sweetly worked out a time when no one else was there for me to get a tour, and I was able to go in and at least see it on a Saturday, on a Saturday morning when no voters were in there, and that was very kind of them, and it was very kind of INTRUST Bank Arena to facilitate that for me. But we had 12,443 people vote at the INTRUST Bank Arena, and we had between 18 to 20 poll workers daily at the arena. Unfortunately, that's not as high as I would have liked to have seen it. I would have liked to have seen more people vote there, just because when you see later in the report, the cost to voter ratio is extremely high compared to what we got for it. However, it did take a significant number of voters off of our office where we did not have space to be social distance. And because it was a pandemic, I still believe it was the right thing to do. It just was not as well attended as I would have liked it to be. But it was still really cool. Our employees, we had 8 full-time, because I was pretty much not working most of that, and 2 part-time permanent office employees working. We had 4 full-time county employees reassigned from other departments, and between those people, they worked 3,522 hours of overtime between the primary and the general election, and then for canvassing. We had 10 temporary staff members and 3 employees from a temporary staffing agency. We had 241 people who worked early voting, and then 958 election workers who worked on election day. And then on election day, we also have multiple employees who serve as our techs, from across the county organization that just handle issues like voting machines that may be jammed, or maybe having an internet connectivity issue at a polling place, something like that. They go out and help with that. Is this where you want to? Yeah. I'm going to defer to Anna here.
Good morning, Annie.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Thanks for joining us. You did a yeoman's job, or a yeowoman's job of leading in. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we take the opportunity to thank the departments around the county who allowed their staff to work during the week and on weekends for a few hours. They helped us sort mail because we were getting a lot back, stuff advanced ballots, create provisional packets, as well as county support on election day. In particular, we want to thank those departments and employees that spent a significant amount of time with us. Sabrina Young and Linda Baker from the county manager's office, as well as Penny Bohannon from MABCD, covered the front desk for several weeks so staff could work with fewer interruptions. The county management interns, Nisa Red, Paul Leaker, and Daisy Obrina-Cahaw, they spent an entire week in the election office helping us with returning mail ballots. We also had 3 county employees besides myself temporarily reassigned: Dave Perricone from Facilities, Laura Hadley from the Division of Information and Technology, and Vicki McMinn from the Division of Public Works. We can't thank them enough. Those 3 people were pivotal for us to be able to keep up with demand. Election staff, we weren't enough to do it, and so we can't thank them or their supervisor enough for being willing. This is a busy year for everyone.
I could not agree with Anna more on that. And I would also just like to say that we put out a call when we started getting a significant amount of mail back each day. And the League of Women Voters actually staffed us with volunteers each day for weeks, just literally sitting there going through mail trays and sorting, this is a ballot, this is a registration, this is an advanced app, and helping us just completely volunteer. And they also assisted us with volunteers who at 7 p.m. on election night were at those ballot drop boxes with the key to just lock it. And just before anybody asks a question, the locks are not the same between where you access the ballots and where you lock the box so no one can put another ballot in. So they had the key to lock the box. They did not have the key to access ballots. I just want to make sure everyone's very clear on that. So they were just there to make sure that at 7 p.m. no more ballots could be put in the box, unless you were in line at 7 p.m., just like voting. But that was very, very helpful to us. That helped us to manage that without having to send our own staff out there. So I wanted to specifically thank the League of Women Voters for being so incredibly helpful to us this election cycle. And they also, we normally try to go out and do voter registration drives. And because of COVID, we could not risk our staff getting sick. And they really did a lion's share of that this year as well. So I just wanted to publicly thank them. We did want, I think Anna and I talked about this, and we wanted to give you this comparison. I've alluded to it several times, but I feel that it's important, especially after we come off of this year, to kind of talk through the 4 large counties that have separate election offices, what our budgets are for 18, 19, and 20. That's just the data I had collected. And then dividing that cost out per registered voter, just because I do believe it's very valuable information for you to have. So if you look at the 2020 budget, Wyandotte County's cost is about $17 per registered voter. And then you have Johnson County, which is just over $14. You have Shawnee, which is about $13. And then you have Sedgwick, which is $6.44 per registered voter. So when we call for help from the county and these other departments don't, that's why. We don't have both Shawnee and Wyandotte. If you look, Shawnee had 17,000 registered voters. Wyandotte had 92,000. They have the same amount of full-time staff that we do in our office. I also just wanted to give, because we're talking about full-time staff, I wanted to give you how many voters each one of our full-time employees serves, and that breakdown by those counties. So in Wyandotte County, you will see they serve 9,124. In Shawnee, 11,661. In Johnson, 26,638. And in Sedgwick, 35,745. Wow. I think that tells a story in and of itself, and it tells the dedication of my employees. Sorry. You will find me doing this more. They tell me the cancer drugs actually make it harder for you to control your emotions. I will always blame it on cancer because I hate it when I cry. But I cannot think about and know what my staff went through and what Anna went through without getting emotional, because if they had not been so dedicated, this election would not have happened, especially in my absence. I'm going to let Anna talk about this because she had the fun time of spending this money. I was aware of it, but she got to spend it. So I'm going to let her be the one to talk about this, and I'll answer any questions that you guys have.
All right. So HAVA Cares was the funding we received from the Kansas Secretary of State's office. We received $420,000. We expended $418,000 of that. Some of the notable purchases that we made were the 14 ballot drop boxes that were very successful, that we'll get to continue to use into the future. We purchased the poll print equipment that allows ballots to be printed on site, which assists with moving people through faster if they want to vote by paper or if they're going to do something provisionally. Cleaning of primary and election day polling locations. We purchased a lot of PPE for polling locations as well as for the office to keep staff safe. We covered unbudgeted postage costs to alleviate the property tax fund, and we also hired additional temporary staff. As you can see from those numbers, those people were necessary. For the Center for Tech and Civic Life, we are awarded just over $816,000. We have currently expended $610,000 of that. Some of the notable projects so far are we purchased 100 additional voting machines. We paid for the costs associated with the mega site. Otherwise, the elections office budget didn't have the funding for those, and we were going to have to find additional funding elsewhere. the promotion of early voting. We really wanted people to vote early, and as you can see from the numbers, that did happen. That really helped with social distancing. And then we also installed those drop boxes. We had the funding from HAVA Cares to purchase them, but not install them, so we were able to leverage this funding to do so. Any remaining funds, as we finish paying invoices that are coming in, we are going to use to cover the hazard pay for poll workers. That's that $2 increase we discussed when we presented earlier this year, and a portion of the staff overtime that we accrued, which will also help alleviate property tax funds.
And I would like to just, again, thank Anna. I know I keep doing that, but it cannot be done enough. She was my eyes and ears, and on election day, she literally had a computer, and she was going from room to room with me on Zoom and keeping me updated, and it was making me nauseous, so she even logged out of Zoom and logged back in each time, so I wasn't going, ooh, you know. Just incredibly helpful so that I could manage election day from home and not be exposed to COVID. I am incredibly grateful that even though through this process we had, I think probably most of our staff at one time or another ended up quarantined, none of my staff ended up with COVID, and that is just not only a relief, but it's just, to me, it's almost miraculous. But it would have been devastating to our office had they gotten COVID and it started making its way through the office, so we're just incredibly grateful that they stayed healthy. Before I move on, I would like to, I don't know if there's anything to move on from, but I just want to check and see if anybody has any questions about this slide.
Okay. I don't see any questions.
Okay.
So thank you for the explanation. Anna, thank you for breaking that down.
And I believe that is the end of the presentation. And I would like to also just take a moment and thank our polling places, because this was a scary year for them to open to the public. Some of them were not willing to, and we had to move people around. As you know, we've been adding polling places. And I would like to just put a big plug in for the County Commission Board, because if you compare 2016 to 2020, we were able to add 20 polling locations. We had brand new voting equipment that we could not have added polling places if we had not had the new voting equipment. That addition of those voting locations and the addition of some early voting locations allowed us to be much more responsive to our voters. We were able, with this new equipment after the 2018 election, we were actually able to go in and look at the amount of time that it takes people to complete their ballot at different parts of the county, and that actually then drove where we added polling locations. Areas where it took people longer to complete their ballot, we added more polling locations, because sometimes when you look at the data, when you're planning an election and you say it should take everybody X amount of time to fill out their ballot, it doesn't take each voter the same amount of time. And so if you give the same resources to every polling places, you might have pockets of the county that have a line. And so by looking at the actual real data from these new voting machines, we were able to then target where our new voting locations went to where it takes longer to vote, and then we were able to cut down. We know that in 16 we had over hour-long lines, and the only time we had any reports of anything even close to that was during early voting, and that was people's choice to stand in that line at that point. Some of them stood in line for a couple hours before early voting even opened, so that's not on us. And I'm grateful they did. I'm glad. Please don't, I'm not trying to disparage anything. I'm just saying that our election day lines were just incredibly short compared to what we've had in past presidential elections, and that is due to the fact that we had more equipment and we were able to open more sites. And with the new equipment, we were able to be much more deliberate in where we put our sites because we had actual data to back it up. So I wanted to thank you all for providing that for us and allowing us to serve our voters better. And with that, I'm done. But it is so good to be here.
Yeah. Okay. We got a few comments here for Commissioner Glasscock first.
First off, it is great to see you again.
Thank you.
And I think everybody in the county should know that you were the right person for the right time for this. Even in the midst of your absence, I saw you more and calls to the community and still engaging. And I think that's a testament to your leadership. Your staff was incredible to work with the entire time, and everybody else. And I was one of the people that took advantage of the Dropbox locations, and it was smooth, it was efficient, it was seamless. In addition, I just think your report shows the testament of your leadership as well in how we're able to use county resources effectively while still franchising more people. And I know your heart to get as many people to vote as possible. They're eligible to vote. And I want to relay to everybody in the county that our elections are safe, our elections are secure. They were prior to this, they are now, and they will continue to be in here in Sedgwick County. And I think this is just incredible work. On Election Day, I went to 10 different locations and never once saw a line, never once saw any problems.
Good.
And I just want to thank you again for coming today, and your leadership and your staff's commitment as well.
Thank you. I'll make sure they get that message.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz. Thank you, Commissioner Glasscock, for your comments. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, you are very brave, and I can't even speak enough about how much it warmed my heart every time I saw you on Facebook talk about your struggle, because it's not an easy thing to do. And so I'm so excited that you're here today, and I'm glad that you're feeling good, and that remission bell ringing was great. So good
and
for
go
you.
Go Chiefs. Sorry, I just have to always say go Chiefs. I love my Chiefs.
Just a couple of quick questions for you. Can you speak to how we hire our polling workers? I've had a concern from a constituent who wants to make sure that the people who are working in our elections office, we have fair and balanced practices of those who are handling ballots. Could you just touch on that for us?
We require that, especially anyone who's touching ballots, there's a party balance so that we can make sure that no one is, messing with anything, and no one person is allowed to touch ballots. There always has to be more than one person. When we hire board workers, they go through an application process. We then actually do a check on them. We check with the Kansas Department of Corrections to see if they have any kind of convictions that would, something that might keep us from hiring them would be if we're going to put them at a location where there's a daycare or something and they have some kind of a past conviction that has to do with sex crimes or something. We're not going to do that. We also try to protect all of our other election workers, obviously. Say, for instance, if they had a felony conviction years and years ago that was for marijuana, I don't care. That's not going to affect their integrity on Election Day. You get my point, okay? But if there's something in their past that, because Kansas law says if you're a convicted felon and you've been released by the court, so you have served your time, you're done with parole, then you are eligible to re-register to vote. So then we're going to look and see if there was something that included fraud or breach of trust. And if there was something like that, then obviously we don't want to hire them because that's a concern that could directly affect elections. But otherwise, we want to be very careful that we are giving people a chance as they're getting back on their feet and getting on the ground and giving them that opportunity. But we need to make sure our elections are secure. So we do check every single person. And then we, as I mentioned, we make sure we have a party balance where possible. There are some times where unaffiliated voters are our party balance because we don't have, if you look at our registration numbers, they're pretty skewed one party over another, and so sometimes unaffiliates fill in as a second party. But we work very hard to make sure that we keep that party balance where possible. Sometimes on Election Day there might be one or two at a polling site, but certainly in our office where we're touching ballots and counting ballots, we're making sure that that's a party balance for each team that's touching things.
Okay, good. Thank you for offering that clarification. Yes. And then lastly, the Vote Anywhere bill that was signed in 2018. Can you give us an update on that?
As far as I know, hopefully we'll be able to do it in 2021. However, I mentioned this briefly during canvassing, and I would just like to just briefly mention it again. Since the time that we got that bill passed, our vendor who provides our poll books added millions and millions of registered voters, the entire county of LA, I think most of New York State, and they had some issues on Election Day that would have caused us problems had we been voting anywhere on presidential Election Day. So we have to get those worked out with that vendor. Now, what that means is during that about an hour to an hour and a half time frame where we could not communicate, people would have been voting provisionally, and that would have been a big issue for us. It wouldn't be for a city school election, but it would be for a presidential. So we have to iron those issues out with this vendor. This was a change from when we got that law changed. And the Secretary of State's office shares my concerns, I promise you, and we will be working with that vendor very hard. But if I am not convinced, and if the state is not convinced that that vendor can hold up their end of the deal, we're going to have to delay it a little more because we have to do it right. And this was something that was not foreseen, and it was something that they made a change that has caused us issues. So we are going to be holding their feet to the fire, I can promise you. I fully intend to speak with legal about the legalities of us not paying our bill next year, which is like $50-some thousand until after we know this has been resolved. And I just fully intend to make sure that they're on the ball on this. But the problem is going to be it's very difficult to test that except for in a live election. And so it's going to take us some time before I trust them again. But hopefully we'll be able to use it in 21. But I just want to be very, very clear that if it's not going to work, I'm not going to do it. So, and this is right now dependent upon one vendor. So.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I hear the last thing you want is for an election to not work
That's
out.
correct. That is correct. I would rather have people vote provisionally for going to the wrong polling place than have something go wrong. So, and that's been our what we've maintained the whole time. It is very regrettable that they added more people than they could handle as far as their load. And I don't know yet exactly what happened. Their servers got overloaded, and but we have to make sure it doesn't happen again. So.
Well, thank you for your support of
Yes.
making it as easy as possible
Absolutely.
to vote in this community, and thank you for doing what you could during this last election. And Anna, thank you for stepping up to the plate, filling some big shoes. You did an incredible job, and I want you to know how much you're appreciated. I know that was not an easy task, and you sure hit it out of the park. So thank you for your service.
And Anna was also very great to just let me vent sometimes, which I'm sure was not fun, but she was the person I got to vent to sometimes. So thank you, Anna.
Maybe Anna could come work on this floor so I can vent once.
She's very good at listening.
Okay, good job. Hey, next up is Commissioner. Thanks for your comments, Commissioner Cruz. And next up, Commissioner Howell, and then Commissioner Dennis. Okay, after Commissioner Howell.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for Tabitha for being here. It's truly a blessing to see you physically in our presence. It's wonderful. It's answered prayer, actually. And you look strong, so thank you for being here today. Thank you for the good report, by the way.
No problem.
I do want to give you an opportunity to speak about something that seems like it keeps coming up. And I've answered the question numerous times. I'm sure you have as well. But would you be willing to kind of explain how much Dominion has impact on our processes here in Sedgwick County?
They have zero. We do not own any equipment or software that is from Dominion at all, period.
I think it's important to note that because I think there's some people out there that just continue to ask the question. I want to drive that home. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I would say just because the election administrator and me can't stand up here and just say we don't have anything to worry about because we don't have that software or that vendor. I would say I know many people who do, and I know them to be just as diligent. Sorry, we'll blame cancer again. Diligent in their jobs as I am, and just as passionate about making sure their elections are secure as I am. And while I cannot speak because I am not in those jurisdictions, I have utmost confidence in the election administrators that I do know in the states that have Dominion who are using that voting equipment, who would not. I've tried to explain this to many, many voters, but we are required to conduct extensive testing on each voting machine prior to Election Day to make sure it is accurately tabulating votes. Then on Election Day, we vote. Then after Election Day, we do a manual hand audit of the ballots, the paper ballots, which Dominion produces paper ballots, to make sure that the machines counted accurately on Election Day and in early voting and ballot by mail. And then after the election, we again test voting machines. So for something to slip by would be incredibly difficult. But again, we don't have Dominion. We don't have any software to do that, but I can't call myself an election administrator if I don't stand up for my colleagues in other states. So, sorry, I just had to put that little plug in there. And I don't owe anything to Dominion. I don't work with them. They're not our vendor, but I can't say enough that there is extreme amount of caution and work, and they go through the same federal vetting process that our vendor goes through.
And I could ask more questions about that, but I think you made the point, and I appreciate your input there. I would note that what I really like about INTRUST Bank Arena, we call that a mega voting site, but one thing is, again, I think Senate Bill 130 sets this up, is that INTRUST Bank Arena was an early voting. You know, they could vote on your ballot, regardless of where you lived in Sedgwick County. you could go to that one site and you could vote. And that was really, which by the way, you can do at any early voting
Right,
site.
correct.
But this is a mega site. You made a note, we had over 12,000 voters go to that one site, which was tremendous.
Yes.
And I am curious, do you know how many people voted provisionally in the wrong poll site on election day this year?
I think it was a little over 1,400.
About
It wasn't
1,400.
actually nearly as bad as I thought it would be, really.
I think what caused Senate Bill 130 was I think it's been up over 2,000 in the
Yes,
past.
it
And I
has.
believe that we're trying to not disenfranchise voters partially. And again, some of the races, the high races, of course, would probably count. Lower races on that ballot might be filtered out because they may be in the wrong place to vote for those races. And
Well, and I think I would mention, Anna touched on it, but the fact that we were able to buy ballot-on-demand printers, we don't have quite enough, but we're pretty close to enough to do them on election day at every polling place. Because we were able to buy those, that then puts us in a position to where even when we're doing vote anywhere, we can print whatever ballot somebody needs anywhere within the county. And so we don't have to have thousands and thousands. One of the things that Anna didn't mention was on election day, we are guessing how many people are going to request a ballot. And so we have to overestimate. And so we literally print thousands, tens of thousands of ballots that end up, blank ballots that end up after election, after everything's done, just being shredded and not used. And these ballot-on-demand printers will keep us from having to do that. We will still print ballots and still have backup ballots at the site because if the printer goes down, we need to continue voting. But we won't have to have thousands and thousands of ballots at every polling location because we will have a printer printing them as people request them. So that's going to make a significant difference for us in the future as well. And we would have purchased more with the Center for Tech and Civic Life money. However, they were out of printers and we couldn't purchase more. So.
And just so people understand, when someone checks in to vote at their poll site or any poll site, maybe it's on early, or maybe they're early in-person voter, they check in, there's an electronic poll book that a poll worker verifies that they're a registered voter and they look up their registration and they check them in, so to speak. At that moment, the database that's behind the scenes is updated, that voter's checked in to vote.
Right, that is the issue that we had on election day.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That was the problem, right? And so we weren't able to have those syncing throughout the county. So because people had to be at their designated polling location, it was okay this year, and it did not cause us to stop voting. But had that happened during early voting, we would have had to stop early voting. So
part of Senate Bill 130, number one, is permissive. It doesn't require
Right.
us to do this. And so to the extent that we can, we have the option. I would say we would still assign someone to a poll site. We wouldn't just simply
Yes,
say
we
everyone can go anywhere you want to go. We would say you have an assigned poll site. And I would hope that most people would go to their assigned poll site or a mega site like the INTRUST Bank Arena, if we have that in the future. But again, the risk is if you go to someplace that's outside your assigned poll site, to the extent that that is working, they could allow you to vote on your assigned ballot. But if it's not working, then you have the option of voting provisionally or going to your assigned poll site at that point.
Right.
And you would explain that to them. You could say at that point, your options are go to your assigned poll site, which is you can tell them where it is, or we'll give you a ballot that has some of the races on it. If you want to vote that ballot provisionally, you can do that here. So again, I would say that, again, Senate Bill 130, if we were to set that up, everyone needs to understand, as long as that system is doing that electronic connection between the poll books, that sets that up to work. But if that doesn't work for any reason, they need to go to their assigned poll site to
right,
vote on
and
the.
we can still do provisional ballots as a backup. Correct.
Very good. Well, I do hope we have some mega sites in the future. I think that's a great desire, and I think we see the success with INTRUST Bank Arena. That was huge. I hope we can do that in the future.
And I will say this, that INTRUST Bank Arena's availability was there this year. I have no idea what their availability will be in future. Hopefully they won't be available just because we want them to have events there. But this is something that Johnson County does. They have fewer early voting sites, but they have them for 2 weeks in their massive mega sites. It was just for us, we were struggling to make sure that we could have enough mega sites that did not, because we are used to having 16 to 18, people are used to having that early voting option pretty much within their community. And if we took that away to only 6 or 7 throughout the county, I could not find, Anna and I worked together. She did most of the work. I should clarify that. I did some of it, but she did most of the work. We could not find locations in some of the lower income areas that would have allowed us to make sure those voters did not have to travel further to cast their ballots early. And that was the biggest concern to me. A higher income area, I'm not belittling it, but I'm not as concerned about having fewer early vote centers in a higher income area because people can travel. It's that lower income that's relying on a bus or a neighbor to take them or walking to a location that we have to make sure we can find those mega sites in those communities to make sure we are not disenfranchising those voters. And that's why we went ahead with one mega site and then went ahead and opened all the rest of them to make sure we were still in the communities to make sure people could vote. So in the future, though, we will have much more time to plan. And so this is absolutely fine if that's the direction you want us to go. I think it is more expensive, but that's also up to you. If you want to provide the money, I'm more than happy to spend it. So we will find a way to do it if you want us to.
Certainly. Thank you for that answer. One other thing I'd like to track a little bit is number of voting machines deployed on Election Day. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? And do you know what Johnson County did on that number of machines for their population?
I know they have over 2,000 machines, and we've just now hit 1,000. But I don't know those numbers. I'm sorry. I can find them out for you, though.
Very good. That'd be good. And then, let's see. I think let me just put a shout out. You also talk about 958 poll workers on Election Day, and every one of them had to be recruited. Paperwork behind the scenes had to happen, and training had to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of work there.
It is.
I don't want to miss that point.
If I could, I would like to give a shout out to my staff who did a lot of work with communications, actually. So we'll give a shout out to them as well, creating some videos for our training classes. And so we were able to actually utilize videos instead of my staff having to stand there and teach it. And every single person received the exact same training on those areas where we were using it, and it wasn't open to interpretation. We were able to post those on our election worker portal to where people could go and review that information if they wanted to the day before the election. So a big thank you to communications. They did a lot of work for us. I will just say that too.
This will be my final comment, but I'll just tell you that before I was ever elected, I've been elected since my first election was in 2010, different for state representative position. But before that, I worked the polls numerous times. In fact, I got to be a supervising judge at a few poll sites. Loved the experience. Mm-hmm. I learned so much about elections at that time. So I would just put a shout out and say, if anybody's skeptical about our processes or how elections work, or they just want to kind of experience it and see what it's all about, please become a poll worker. Mm-hmm. What a great experience. I look back to that and I will never forget how great of an experience that was. Met some great people, but I have more confidence and trust in our system because of that experience, and I will never forget how great it was. And I think we've improved since then, obviously. So please just, anybody who may be worried about how elections work, just become one of those 958 next time. And I think that they'll have the same opinion I do at the end of the day. Thank you for all you do, Commissioner Lehman. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Howell. And Commissioner Dennis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Tabitha, it is great to see you. We're still praying for you. We hope you get everything in good shape in the near future. The only comment that I have is one of the things that I continue to receive are emails still criticizing the grant that we took from Center of Tech and Civic Life. And the thing I try and stress on every single reply to those emails is that our election here in Sedgwick County is honest, and we value the integrity of what happens in the election process. And nothing happened as a result of that grant that affected a single vote on the outcome of our election. And I just want to make sure that the entire public hears that from all of us, that this is an honest and that all of our workers have the highest integrity, and every vote counts, and every vote is a valid vote. So I don't want to belabor the issue, but again, welcome back, and we'll keep praying for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dennis, for your comments. And I'll just summarize that you've got a lot of kudos from fellow commissioners. Thank you, commissioners, for all your comments. I echo most all of them as well. And thanks again, Commissioner, how you mentioned the volunteers and the training and all of that. So fantastic. I want to thank Anna. You've had a lot of kudos today, but I'll put mine in there as well. And I understand please share our thanks to Melissa Schneider and Sandra, is it Greitz? So tell them our thanks as well.
I will do that.
I hope you all enjoyed when I delivered donuts that morning to.
You didn't deliver any to my house, so I didn't get any. I'm just, that's okay.
I sent you a virtual
That is
donut.
okay. I was not the one answering phones over there. That's okay.
Okay, but I think it's just great information, and as Commissioner Glasscock mentioned, I think that our community had a safe and a secure and an accurate election. I know that personally, watching other states that had a lot of turmoil, a lot of questions, a lot of security issues, a lot of witness issues, all those things, that every time I'd see that on the news, I'd just be sitting there going, oh, thank you for Sedgwick County and our state in whole, but especially for you all that allowed people like us to sleep at night knowing that we have the confidence in you. So my sincere appreciation and thank you. Appreciate it.
I appreciate those comments, and once again, as an election administrator, I will just stick up for my colleagues. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so take some things with a grain of salt.
I get you. I hear you.
And it's very easy to take something out of context and run with it, so I will just leave that alone. And laws are different in every state, so I would say that we are I would say very, very blessed in Kansas with our election laws. We are able to offer early voting, ballots by mail and polling place, and we are able to count those ballots by mail as they come back in. Some of the states that there was a lot of questions going on, those questions, a lot of those were because they are not able and allowed to start opening advance by mail ballots until Election Day or the day after and start counting them. So when people are concerned that they're just now counting ballots and think, oh, they found all these ballots. No, they didn't. Their laws don't allow them to count them before Election Day like ours do. And so we are very grateful for that. And that's why you see so many people cast a provisional ballot, because our laws are much more inclusive, I believe, in Kansas than a lot of other states. So I'm very grateful I work here and not in one of those other states. I will just say that. I'm so glad I'm not in a swing state. I'm so glad.
Yeah, very good. Well, don't move to one of those either.
Okay,
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't see any other comments.
Motion to receive and file.
Okay. Motion and a second to receive and file the report. I don't see other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item B, a resolution establishing the date, time, and location of a public hearing to consider a petition requesting boundary modifications to the Aerospace Industrial District of Sedgwick County, Kansas, and providing for notice of such public hearing.
Good morning. Brent, welcome to the commission meeting.
Good morning, Chairman Meitzner and members of the County Commission. I'm Brent Shelton, your Deputy CFO. Earlier this year, you approved some modifications to the boundaries of what was then known as the Boeing Industrial District and renamed that district to the to the Aerospace Industrial District. The item before you today is a part of a two-step process to begin another boundary modification. In that original boundary modification, there were some parcels included that are part of the city, within the city limits of the city of Wichita. So that's a contradictory or conflicting place for parcels to be. They can't be in the city limits and in an industrial district. So what you're approving today would be a resolution to establish a public hearing to then hear a petition to remove those from the Aerospace Industrial District. That public hearing would be set for January 23rd and would be, January 20th would be the public hearing, and we're making arrangements for people to be able to call in should they wish to speak to that petition. So today this is a resolution to set the public hearing date, direct the county clerk to publish the notice of hearing once in the official county newspaper. I'll answer any questions. I would recommend that you approve that resolution.
Okay, thank you. So again, we're just setting the establishing the date and time.
Correct.
For the public hearing. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Commissioner Howell, this might be in your area. You want to make the motion?
Thank you, Chairman. I would love to make a motion. It's a kind of a long thing, but I'll say it. Chairman, I would like to set the public hearing date and direct the county clerk to publish the notice of hearing once in official newspaper, and that date would be
January 20th, 2021.
January 20th, 2021. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item C, Amendment Number 5 to the INTRUST Bank Arena Management Agreement between Sedgwick County and SMG.
Good morning, Lindsay. And Lindsay, before you start, I just want to, Commissioner Dennis, if I don't, if I forget to look up to see if you have any comments or something, feel free to interrupt, because I may forget to look up. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Lindsay.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Lindsay Poe-Rousseau, your CFO, and for purposes of discussion today, your contract administrator for the agreement for management of operations of INTRUST Bank Arena with SMG, now a part of ASM Global. So before we get into the details today about this proposed amendment change, I just want to take a moment to thank the folks who are involved in this. Karen Powell has done yeoman's work, to quote the earlier word, to get this to where it is and put it in good shape and get us to hopefully a successful 2021. So my thanks to her. Also, my thanks to AJ Boleski, the general manager of the INTRUST Bank Arena, who's here in the audience with us today. AJ would not want me to tell you, but it is his birthday. So happy birthday, AJ. No better way to spend your birthday than hanging out at a commission meeting, right?
Oh, exactly.
So,
exactly.
And then, of course, I want to thank Tom and Mike for their participation through this process, too. So we'll go ahead and jump into the details. As with most of our arena presentations, we'll do some basic background history of how we got where we are today. We'll talk a little bit about the benefit to the community, talking about why we want to invest and continue this partnership that we have with our partners at SMG. We'll talk about what 2020 has done to operations for that facility, and then status of the Arena Reserve Fund, and finally we'll talk about what it is that we're actually here for, and if we get super in the weeds and technicalities, then I'll ask Karen to come up and help address any specific questions you might have. So with that, we will jump into the arena management. So SMG was actually hired in 2007 as the building operator. Their charge is to promote, operate, and manage the facility in order to ensure the provision of high-quality management services, thereby enhancing the use and enjoyment of the arena. So in a typical year, the management agreement that was structured says that we mutually benefit from profit, but that SMG would incur any operating losses in the course of a year. And that is what brings us here today, is some complications with that particular portion of the agreement. So while we did have the original agreement in 2007, it has been amended a few times. Most recently, it was amended actually in 2019, almost exactly a year ago. We were here before you to talk about the future of our relationship with SMG. And so at that time, SMG had met its performance requirement to get an auto renewal trigger under the terms of the prior agreement. They made enough money, they made roughly $940,000 for the county, and exceeded their 800, on slide 3 here, you can see that their amendment here had an auto renewal clause that required $850,000. And like I said, they had $940,000 in 4 years instead of the 5-year requirement. So we came back and renegotiated those terms, and that is then what resulted in this amendment number 4 that was approved last year. And so what that did was it essentially extended the term. It picked up where it left off, and it added 5 years onto the term that SMG had already earned. And then it also set it doubled that $850,000 figure. It set $1.7 million as the auto trigger number to earn an additional 5 years at the end of that term. And this is germane to our discussion today because obviously with operations in 2020 and what we expect to be occurring at least through the first half of 2021, that is going to create some real challenges for getting to that 1.7 million figure. So in addition to that renewal for the term, we also retain that profit sharing formula so that right now the first $400,000 of operating profit goes to SMG, and then anything over that is split 50-50 between the county and SMG. In addition, if you recall, there were some concerns about the longevity of the Arena Sales Tax Reserve Fund, really just the Arena Reserve Fund now that we're kind of moving into the next decade of operations. And so $1.50 of every ticket that would be sold that was eligible was going to be remitted back to the county for use strictly on CIP support for the arena. And a big part of that was because at the time we were discussing the new scoreboard that was going in anticipation, of course, of the 2021 tournament, fortunately now canceled, but also in preparation for the bids that were going to be submitted by WSU and the arena team for the next round of NCAA awards. So at the same time, SMG also provided an upfront CIP investment of $250,000 for the fiscal year we're in now to buy a scorer's table and do some additional small benefits there. At the time that agreement was extended, again, just to reiterate what SMG has brought to the table, this slide depicts the awards that they have won from, or a recognition they received from their professional association. And so you can see that in 2013 and in 2018, they each received some pretty high accolades, referencing why they were able to be named a Venue Excellence Award winner. It's not common for a venue to be chosen twice. I think there are only a couple others that I was aware of at this time that have ever had that happen. So certainly the team that we have here has brought a lot of good value to our community and lots of great events. So speaking of that, these are some slides that we looked at last year. Unfortunately, because COVID hit us so early in 2020, there wasn't a lot of great data to go in and add and tell the story since the last time we talked about this last December. So what this shows is really how widely used the facility is across the county. It's not one particular area or one particular section of the county that uses this facility. It's pretty well evenly split. And you can see on this next slide then how that kind of breaks down by the type of events. So you can see certainly District 2 jumps in Thunder, District 1 jumps for sporting, and then the others are fairly comparable across the board, but definitely good use, diverse events, different types of activities that can appeal to pretty much everyone across our county. So this was supposed to be the 10-year celebration year.
Lindsay,
Yes, sir.
this is a good, these last two slides are good. I recall that you had them before, but that's good information. Thank you.
My pleasure. It is. I thought that was really interesting data when we had that, so thought it was worth sharing again. So yes, it was supposed to be a banner year for us this year. And unfortunately...
What happened?
I don't know. I mean, there's like this little thing called COVID. I think I've heard of it.
Okay.
You're a comedy show today.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's all good. So between January 3rd and March 11th, you can see there were a significant number of events that had already kicked off. Thank you. Quite a few events and definitely running the gamut in terms of the types of entertainment. Definitely everything from Trolls Live to Kiss, Korn, George Strait, something for everybody here in the kind of first two months of the year. And then, of course, COVID comes. March 11th is when we first heard it was going to be a pandemic. March 13th, the President of the United States declared the national emergency, and then, of course, on March 16th, our chairman and commission declared the state of local disaster emergency for Sedgwick County. And since that time, of course, there have been a series of local public health orders that include capacity, size adjustments, and all of those things. And so because of that and because of COVID, we were in a situation where SMG was obviously not able to perform, get events, host events in their facility. And so on July 17th, SMG made the county aware that they were invoking what's called the force majeure clause of their management agreement. And that is spelled out in your backup, the actual text of that portion of the agreement. But essentially, a pandemic counts as an act of God that comes in and disrupts an entity's ability to perform. It's not anybody's fault in particular. But under that provision, either SMG could walk away from the contract because they weren't able to perform, or the county would be in a position to absorb net operating loss. And so there were a multitude of discussions between the teams, and on August 28th, Karen has helped me put together a letter that was sent back to SMG, formally accepting that notice and trying to figure out what terms we would have going forward. And of course, since then, things have progressed. We still have health orders that are in place. And then, of course, the NCAA came in and said that because of the continued anticipated impact of COVID-19, they were going to have a single location for their 2021 tournament for men's basketball. And so our site was canceled for 2021, unfortunately, and that was November 16th. And so that has even yet more influenced where we stand today, going into 2021. So for a little background on the arena sales tax reserve, before we get into what we're recommending for 2021. Voters did approve a sales tax to construct this facility. That was a 1 cent sales tax that ran for 30 months, and you can see that it collected just over $206 million. Construction started in November of 2007, and the arena itself opened January 9th, 2010. And the total project cost was $191 million. That was everything for land, demolition of properties that were there, and then construction of the site itself. And so that meant that we were in a great position to start operations of the facility 10 years ago with a reserve of $15.5 million. Now, of course, as we mentioned earlier, we had some grand plans going into 2021 with the NCAA tournament and doing the bid. And so we'll look at it on the next slide too, but one of the big improvements that was made to the facility was replacement of a scoreboard to make it more in line with what other facilities that we would compete with for tournaments, which are huge economic drivers for our area. But we went ahead and approved a $4 million total CIP program for the arena for 2020, including a significant portion for that scoreboard and also the marquee replacement that faces Kellogg. So where we stand today is that reserve is just at $3.4 million. And that was the information that was shared yesterday in that November monthly financial report, so you can actually see the activity coming in and going out for the year. So that is essentially where we stand today. Of course, we have projections on what we think that CIP will look like. Well, you know that when the budget was adopted for 2021 back in August, it included $1,030,000 for CIP for 2021. As a part of this whole conversation with SMG, they have scaled that back significantly, down around, I believe, the $225,000 mark. 175 because we got a project done with CARES. So $175,000 going into 2021. So certainly, even though there was a long-term asset replacement strategy, even that has been discussed and negotiated through this discussion. So I mentioned the scoreboard and marquee replacement. We also had the entrance C remodel that was done several years ago that kind of opened up the facility so that it could face into all of the activity happening in Old Town, and that has been a tremendous success, and I think has been great with all of the multitude of events that AJ has been trying to host. At the same time they were passing out PPE kits this year, they were doing advanced elections on the other side of the building. So certainly something that has been utilized even through all of this. So, and then you can see some other CIP projects that were included here. So with all of that said, we are now in a position to either continue to operate under a force majeure where the county bears the net operating loss, or we're in a position to try and negotiate with SMG. And so what has been proposed and agreed to at the staff level is a proposed amendment number 5 to the agreement. Essentially what the agreement does is it almost places a pause on our normal agreement. So for 1 year, the county would remit to SMG a $200,000 management fee. The science of that is it's basically half of what they would normally receive under that distribution we talked about, where SMG receives the first $400,000 and then funds are split after that. And then in addition, the county would essentially on a monthly basis remit to SMG any net operating losses. So we certainly expect that in the first half of the year, there's not going to be a lot of revenue coming in. AJ and his team have taken great pains to try and limit what cost is being incurred in each month. He'll be the first to tell you that his staff have been on furlough and have been that way for months now. And that would continue for some time until the building can become operational again. Although as things like hockey and other events come back, he can start to bring those staff back. And that would be a revenue generating opportunity. So the agreement would allow us to remit those net operating losses. We would expect to have those through the first half of the year. And then hopefully, as the second half of the year improves, any revenues would come back to the county in that second half. And the net impact at the end of the year would be evaluated. And if it is better to live under the terms of the old agreement, then we'll go to the terms of the old agreement, where we have $400,000 of revenue that goes to SMG, and then we have the split. Certainly, based on what we know today about COVID, we don't see that being a likely scenario, but it's something in there that would protect both the county and the arena. In addition, because we have talked about basically losing 10 months of 2020 and anticipated roughly 6 months of at least normal operations, and that even assumes events are ready to start coming back and touring as soon as COVID ends, a significant chunk of loss in 2021. And so to make it right to SMG to give them the opportunity to earn that $1.7 million over 10 years, the proposal would be to add 2 years on the back end of the agreement that we have today. And so essentially it just adds 2 years to the operating term, so through 2032. If they're able to earn that $1.7 million through 2031, then it would auto-renew for 5 years for 2033 through 2037. And I want to explain that 1 year gap. That is because, of course, we can't just turn off the lights and walk away. We would need some time to know if they've met that auto-renewal trigger or not, so that if we did need to go out through a competitive process or negotiate a new agreement, we would have that opportunity to do that in that 1 year. So certainly not a position I think either the county or SMG enjoys being in, but certainly we want to continue the relationship, and we want to be in a position for the facility to be able to literally rock and roll when COVID's over. So that would be what we have for you today. I am certain you have questions, and I'm happy to answer those, or we'll call up the appropriate folks to talk. Otherwise, my recommendation is that you authorize this amendment number 5.
Okay. Lindsay, thanks for explaining the history. I think that's helpful for not only us, but the community to hear all this. And thanks, Karen, for your hard work on the amendment. and the legal team, and then, of course, AJ, thanks for all your work, and I hope that, I know we lost Chris up to one of your sister places up in Kansas City. Please extend our thanks to her, and good luck to her as well. I got a question or comment from Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I do see AJ out there, so I wanted to say, I think the facility looks better today than it did when it was brand new. You've done a great job taking care of the facility, and in many ways it is a better facility because we've added a lot of amenities that weren't there on the day that it opened. So I want to say thank you for everyone for that. But I want to make a couple of points here. First of all, you said a curious thing a minute ago. I want to clarify what you said. I believe you said if it's better at the end of 2021, we would go back to the old agreement language. Can you please explain that a little bit more? Better for who, and who makes that determination?
Karen, do you want to speak to the specifics of how that would work?
Karen Powell, Deputy County Counselor. Commissioner Howell, the way the amendment is structured is that it applies through the entire year of 2021. It has the financials are flexible. In other words, if there's a net profit, then the profits would go to SMG up to the $400,000 level, but they're split beyond that. And that is the piece, the split on the profits is what Lindsay's referring to, going back to the old agreement. That's the financials that are in place right now. But this entire agreement or the amendment applies for the entire year of 2021. Does that make sense? And I'll answer your question.
Well, so just to, again, trying to clarify. So this is only for 2021, and 2022 goes back to the old?
Yes, the old financial structure. Okay. And then, so that was written so that, we this pandemic is so unpredictable. And so we try to put some flexibility into it so that it's, if there is a profit toward the end of the year, and there's very serious likelihood that a lot of people want to get out and go to concerts once the vaccine is widespread. And so it could be, blow it out of the water at the end of the next year. And so the way that it was structured so that there would be that potential for splitting the profits above $400,000, that's what Lindsay was referring to when she was saying it goes back to the old agreement. She meant that the financial structure would be the same as the current base agreement.
So when you use the term better, you mean that there's more profit to be, there's more revenue and at that point we can say, at that point, which of the two formulas benefits the county or benefits ASM more? How do we determine which is the way to calculate?
Well, it will be a month-to-month assessment of profits and losses. If it's a loss, then the county is invoiced for that amount. If it's a profit, then SMG pays county. And then at the end of the year, there will be a review, or each month actually there'll be a review. Is what I'm anticipating. There'll be a review of whether SMG has been paid $200,000 in profit. That's the minimum that they will earn. If it goes between $200,000 and $400,000, then that profit goes to SMG, and anything beyond $400,000 in total for 2021 is split.
Okay. I'll just make a comment. I have one other question, but comment. When we talk about the word profit, we need to define what that is. I understand what that is, but I want to make sure everyone understands what that is. That is money that goes back to the county, but it goes into the sales tax reserve fund to be used for the INTRUST Bank Arena at a future date. It's not put into the general fund. We can't use it to hire a police officer or fix a street or something like that.
And I'll look to Lindsay. That is true. Yes, that's true.
So the word profit is an interesting word because again, it probably reduces our likelihood we're going to use property tax funds as soon as I think we probably will. And let me make the point that you mentioned we have about a $15 million beginning balance. I think that's what you said. Was it 15? $15 million back about 10 years
Lindsay
ago.
says yes. Lindsay says yes.
About 10 years ago, it was about $15 million. And you know, we've made lots of improvements. A lot of the money that's been taken out of that reserve fund has gone to improvements in the facility. Some years it actually, the balance actually went up. About 3 of those years since 2010, it's gone up a couple of years. But it has gone down, and usually the big jumps down is because we've invested in the building. So let's be fair, and I think that's a great way to describe that. But what I guess what I would highlight here is that there's a point in the future, and it may be 2 years in the future or 5 years in the future, we don't know when. There's a point in the future where that reserve fund will be gone. And when that happens, when INTRUST Bank Arena needs revenue from Sedgwick County, it's going to come from property tax dollars. So by putting that profit, you want to call it that, back in that reserve fund, it delays that inevitability at some point. Right now, our balance is last I checked, was $3.4 million. And so if you chart that out, that line is going down. If you draw a line through all those data points, it's going down. And we know it's going to hit zero at some point. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So I do think we want to be careful with using money out of there too quickly and trying to keep from having to use property tax dollars in the future. So it's certainly good to see what we call profit go back into that fund. But having said that, I want to make sure people understand it's not money for us to spend some other way. That's not what this is.
And just to explain, Commissioner Howell, the reason we use the word profit is that that's the way the agreement describes it. Okay. So we talk in terms of that. But then when you take that, you're correct. It goes to the reserve fund, and it would prolong the reduction of down to zero of that fund. So
I have one question and then one comment, and that is, I am curious. I'm not sure I've ever heard this data, and this might be a question for AJ or for Lindsay. I don't know, but we talk about Century 2 was a 50-year building apparently, and I don't know what the depreciation plan is for INTRUST Bank Arena. How many years is it supposed to serve this community? Do we know?
Commissioner, we do have a depreciation schedule, and that's what we use in our CAFR to basically depict the value of the asset over time. And so I believe we have that on a 50-year depreciation. I'll confirm that and send that back to you. But I don't know that we would tie the actual usefulness of the facility to that standard figure. I
just want to make sure we track that, at least mentally, so we know, every year there is that investment of more than $200 million, we're essentially consuming that over time. It has depreciation. Sure. We have to realize that. And then finally, I guess to say, I would rather personally see us calculate this at the end of the year. I don't have any problem with, ensuring our partner doesn't end up below zero, because I understand this is really not their fault, and I understand the force majeure. We've got to keep them from going below water here. That's no problem. But the question is whether that should be calculated at the end of the year or calculated by month. And I think it's better for the county to be calculated at the end of the year. I don't know why we would change it to by the month. I'm not quite sure what the reason for that is.
So that was something we actually discussed throughout these negotiations, is how to approach that. And it's essentially a cash flow issue. As we talked about, the arena is not hosting events. They still have personnel expenses and utility expenses and equipment expenses that they need to pay, and they don't have a cash flow to come in for that. And so that's why on a monthly basis, I do a monthly financial review with them anyway. We can see exactly what's been spent, talk about things. We would remit the funds then. Again, at the beginning of the year, we're anticipating that we would need to remit funds, but then the hope is that in that second half of the year, the county would actually be receiving the net operating profit from the arena.
Let me be clear. I don't mind necessarily keeping them with the funds they need to operate from now until they actually start doing events again. That to me is one issue, and I understand that they'll need to draw off the reserve fund to make that happen, and I'm okay with that. What I'm saying is the calculation on profit, I think, should happen one time at the end of the year. So we can take all that into account, but that should go into the calculation that happens at the end of next year, not something we would do each month.
It essentially will. So we'll see where we stand at the end of the year, and then if we need to settle up with the arena at that time, we would do it at the end of the year. But otherwise, it will be give and take every month, and then once we see how everything settles out with that audit, then we would make things right if necessary, if that makes sense.
I guess so. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I don't see any other comments. I'll make, Commissioner Dennis? Yep, Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. First of all, I want to thank Lindsay for working this so hard, AJ for working with us, Karen Powell especially for taking care of all of the legal aspects. As long as we're talking about Karen Powell, this may be the last opportunity that we have to be able to thank her formally. She is retiring, I understand, here at the end of the month. And we appreciate all the support that she has given us over the years. It is truly appreciated.
Thank you,
Karen,
Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Commissioner Dennis. Thank you, Karen. With that,
I do have a couple more comments.
Okay,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to make sure to thank some folks.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to make sure that everybody understands that back in 2005 to 2007, the public, our citizens, voted to have an INTRUST bank arena. It is an asset to our community, and we have to protect that asset. We, as stewards of that facility, have an obligation to our community to be sure that we protect it. Part of that requirement that we have is to have someone keep the facility in good shape, whether we're able to have events there or not, to keep security on it, keep the lights on, to make sure that that facility is ready to go whenever we get through this pandemic. So this is something that we need to do. I do have a couple quick questions. The way it looks to me from this amendment number 5 is that we'll pay up to $200,000 per month. So that is $2.4 million by the end of the year if we don't have events. If we start events again, possibly that will cut off. But if this is looking at this amendment for calendar year 2021, our obligation is $2.4 million. But on top of that, it says net operating cost per month. But that number isn't in any of my charts here on the briefing slides. So I need to know what the total cost could be for the year if we adopt amendment number 5.
Commissioner Dennis, this is Karen. It is $200,000 per year, and so we would pay if the arena is operated in a deficit, we would pay $16,666.67 per month as a management fee to the SMG, which is a 12th of $200,000. So that's what that is. I apologize if the language is confusing, but it is actually let's say the entire year is operates at a loss, then SMG gets $200,000. Period. That's what they get. County would absorb the operating costs, but they would reap the $200,000 management fee per year. So I apologize if that was confusing, but.
So this slide is not right because it says county to pay management fee of $200,000 plus net operating cost per month.
That's a poor wording choice. Lindsay said that was a poor wording choice, and we apologize for that, sir.
The total cost, if we go all of 2021, is $200,000.
Correct. Provided that and knowing that we are absorbing the operating expenses, we don't know exactly what those will be, but the entire management fee we would be paying is $200,000 if the entire year is at a loss. That's what we would be paying.
That we will have additional costs on top of this.
Expenses, yes, operating expenses. Lindsay's going to address that.
apologies, Commissioner, for that. So what we will pay $16,667 roughly a month plus any net operating loss. What we anticipate is that net over the entire course of 2021, the county may have a net loss of about $1.1 million that it would pay. Now, that assumes, though, that the first half of the year we would have greater cost, and then revenue would come in the second half of the year to offset it. So it's likely that the first few months could be greater payments out, and then revenue in the second half of the year. And so that is a budget that AJ has submitted, and I will share that with you. But just like our budget, it's a plan, and so it's going to depend on actuals for what we're actually invoiced. And that'll be part of those monthly financial reviews I do with the arena staff so that we can see exactly how we're spending it, and then we would cut a check for the actuals, not the budgeted amount.
Okay, Lindsay, then, so we have the possibility right now projected of a $1.1 million loss on the arena for calendar year 2021.
Yes, sir.
Is any of that in our budget?
No. But at this time, the proposal would be to use the sales tax reserve. We did learn from legal that that was an appropriate use of the sales tax reserve, so it would not impact the county's property tax supported funds.
No, but it will impact the property tax supported funds in the future because
Yes.
it's that quicker that we're going to be funding the INTRUST Bank Arena out of general funds. So
Yes, sir.
it basically is, for all intents and purposes, going to come out of general funds sooner than it ever would have. So I think it's important to note that we have the potential of a 1.1 million that was not in our budget for calendar year 2021. Well, thank you for those questions. Once again, I don't know if Karen would like to say anything. I apologize if I cut her off earlier, but I want to make sure that we do thank her for her service to our county. Thank you, Karen.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Dennis. Thank you all for letting me serve the county for a little over 20 years. I've enjoyed my work here. I started in the year 2000, and I was thinking back, it was probably exactly 20 years ago that I was standing at the podium, having been at the office only maybe 2 months. And at that time, there was a program where each department would present to the county commission telling a summary of what they had done or what their office does. And so I was selected for doing that, and it was nice to have a vote of confidence from Rich Houston to stand at the podium and tell about what my office was all about after only being here 2 months. Anyway, so I've been my career, I've been representing the sheriff's office throughout almost my entire career here, and was solely responsible for their legal advisor from 2007 to about 2017. I guess one of my proudest accomplishments was helping with the adult entertainment regulation. That was early in my career, I became involved in that project. The Oaklawn community was very much adamant on cleaning up their community. The area of 47th and Clifton had 3 clubs there that they were very concerned about. Their kids would have to walk by these adult clubs with various things on signs. And mind you, never in a million years in my law school career did I think I was going to be involved in regulating adult clubs, but there I was. So it gave me a good perspective on what it's all about to work for the county, because these people they had petitioned the county, submitted a petition asking for additional regulations on these clubs, and the community activists were they're just passionate about their community and helping them out, and so it made it real for me to be involved in that, and it was a success. There's now all 3 clubs are closed, and that area is cleaned up. The volunteers were just outstanding, and so
So anyway, that was one of the things I enjoyed most about my tenure at the county, is helping with that project and helping get that area clean. So I look forward to volunteering more in my spare time, and my husband is now also retired. Once things open up, we'll do some traveling. But I'm again, I'm appreciative of helping all of you in your work and serving the community, and ready for a new chapter in my life. So.
Well, thank you, Karen. When I was chairman, you helped me an awful lot, and I sincerely appreciate that.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Karen. I don't. Thank you for your service. I don't really have any questions for you.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
I'd like to get back to the language that's written in this proposed change to the agreement. I too was a little confused. I have to concur with Commissioner Dennis. This to me, and I sent a text to Tom saying county to pay management fee of $200,000. Plus net operating costs per month. So I want to make sure that we communicate exactly what that means, because I don't need the 4 community members calling me saying we're going to pay the interest bank $200,000 a month plus their operating costs. So we need to make sure that we communicate this in a way that's accurate, so that the Eagle doesn't print something that isn't. So can we get the $1.1 million loss calculated to us so that we understand exactly what we're looking at? Because I don't see that here, and that's not what I heard when we briefed.
Lindsay has that
last week about that. So I understand it's just, this was on the screen for a pretty long time for community members to see, and I want to make sure that we're communicating accurate information. I understand protecting our assets, and I am ready to get back to concerts myself. I'm very sad about Cher. I hope that she's coming back. AJ, is Cher coming back? That's a really burning question for this community right now that we need answered.
We'll continue to pursue live.
Stop. Okay. Yeah. So, those are my main questions and concerns. I just, when you talk about $16,000 per month, that's a little bit different than 200. So, if we could get that communicated, plus those net operating costs, I'd like to see that as well. And we don't have to see it right this instant, but I want to make sure that.
I just changed the wording.
Okay. Yeah. So, but if they're not watching anymore, I want to make sure that we have this communicated correctly. Okay, because that's a big difference. So that's all my questions. I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comment, I make a motion to approve amendment number 5 with the language that's accurate.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. I don't see, are there any comments? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Thanks again.
Commissioners.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, AJ. Can you get back with Commissioner Cruz about Cher? That's an important thing.
Thank you.
Actually, Commissioner Dennis and I think Manager Stoltz like to know that as well. So. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item D, amendment to the Community Investments Plan for the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County, Kansas.
Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
Hey, Scott, before you get going here on this proposal or on this presentation, we saw this presentation last week, and we tabled this issue for a week so you could catch up with commissioners. And I know Commissioner Cruz was especially interested in getting more information. So before you start, Commissioner Cruz, did you get all the information you needed?
I received all the answers to my questions. I appreciate your time and walking me through this. And so I have no further questions regarding this matter.
Okay, and this presentation we received last week, I don't think it needs to be repeated. I'm willing to go ahead and make a motion to approve this amendment to the community investment plan as presented last week, and unless it's any change from last week's presentation?
No changes.
Okay, all right. Well, in the essence of time and repetitiveness, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the amendment to the community investment plan as proposed.
Second.
Second.
Okay, been motion second. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the chance to analyze this further before we vote on this, and so I do appreciate the extra time, Chairman, and thank you for a good briefing I had with you the other day. Some of the things I wanted to understand is, what is the justification for an expansion of the urban growth area for these particular cities? This doesn't really impact District 5 as much as it does the other districts, and so I will probably support this, trusting the other commissioners know what they want for their districts. But I do want to make a couple of points just so people understand. I did ask for some data. Just give you an example. The city of Andale, for example, they had an increase of 59 in their population in the last 10 years. They put that in a percentage, that's a 6.3% increase. That particular city is a little more than a half mile in size, and their growth area is about 3 times as big as their city size. And if you add that together, it's about a 2 square mile area that they have control over. That particular city wants to go from that. They wanted to add another 0.59, just a little bit less, actually, but about another half square mile. If you compare that, that's about so right now, they have a 451% geographic area that they can control compared to the city size. Take that back. Right now it's 257%, and they're going to go to 451%. I guess my point would be, I don't know that that's justified based on their growth. And again, I just want to, compare that with other cities as well. I'm looking at all the 20 cities in Sedgwick County, and actually 4 of them lost population. I did give the commissioners a copy of a spreadsheet, and they have that on front of them. I'll give one to the clerk here for the record. But looking at the populations and the city sizes and the amount of area that they control, there in this amendment, there are 6 cities that are increasing their size. And as I said a minute ago, the city of Andale is the biggest change in terms of percentage. The other one that really tends to stand out to me is the city of Valley Center. They had an increase of 503 people. This particular change, they're going to go from about a 226% growth area compared to their city size to a 422% growth area for their city size. Their population is increased 7.3% over the last decade. So, again, I don't know that makes sense to anybody else, but I guess I would say I'll support the changes, but I don't know that it's good for us to not recognize a reasonable, rational growth area that makes sense. And to me, I don't know that if I've made a case or not, but I would just tell you, in summary, out of the 1,009 square miles in Sedgwick County, after this change today, only 307 of those are outside of a growth area. So that means about 700 miles, square miles of our county is connected either inside of a city or part of a growth area of a city, which means essentially when you have a property issue that you want to have approved in on your property, that you potentially will have a city that will weigh in a little bit and let you know whether or not they want you to do that or not. And it does increase additional vote requirements on the governing boards to make that happen. So that's really my concern. This goes way back to the idea of taxation without representation. We've reduced these a little bit. I think back in 2016, we got rid of the zoning area of influence and we went back to the urban growth areas. That was the genesis of this. I think we struck a real nice balance, and we've actually made amendments about every year to one of these cities, and every year since then. But having said that, again, I'll support the motion, but it doesn't really impact District 5 so much. It impacts the other districts much more than mine, so I'll support the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Thanks again, Scott, and for getting back with us and getting us the extra information.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item E, resolution establishing an economic development incentives policy and joint guidelines with the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County.
Good morning, Brent, again.
Good morning, Chairman Meitzner, members of the County Commission. Again, for the record, Brent Shelton, your Deputy CFO. It's really no news to anyone here or that is watching that our region has faced some economic challenges in the last year and a half. We had the problems with the 737 MAX and that grounding, which resulted in a lot of disruption to our aviation manufacturing and that supply chain. And we're still dealing with the effects of the pandemic, which has had other ripple effects. And as you know, we had the highest unemployment rate in the state for a while. But even before these events happened, we were looking to ways to become more competitive as a region, as we compete for new jobs, new industry to come to the area and in retaining those good quality jobs. So this morning, I'm going to have Andrew Nave with the Greater Wichita Partnership speak to you about a new incentive policy that is proposed for you to adopt today. The City of Wichita has adopted these incentive guidelines as part of their economic development policy. We're trying to get a coordinated approach where we're cooperating with cities across the county, counties across the region, and with the state, because when one of us wins, we all win. So as we move forward and recover, as we turn the page on the pandemic, we feel that this is some good guidelines and good tools for us to use as we go forward to compete economically with other jurisdictions. So after Andrew's remarks, we'll be able to stand for questions, but then we would ask that you would adopt that resolution establishing these new economic development incentive policy and guidelines. So I'll give it over to Andrew now, and he can address you.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Andrew. Welcome to the commission meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the commission, good morning. Thank you for having me. Brent, thank you. And to Tom and your team, pleased to be here this morning. Brent set it up very, very well. Some of this information you've heard, you all have been a part of this very inclusive process and participatory process across Sedgwick County to have the sharpest and most up-to-date economic incentive tools that our county and our communities in Sedgwick County can have. So I'm going to do a couple things this morning, kind of just highlight kind of the need and remind you a little bit of the need. Brent has set that up very well. I talk a little bit about the process that we went through to give you kind of these recommendations, and then happy to kind of hit on the highlights of the guidelines itself. It's a 80-plus page document. Happy to go through it if you're interested, but I think not a lot of it, not all of those 80 pages were changed and touched, so I think we can kind of hit the highlights as we go forward. But happy to answer questions for sure. To set the stage, you all have seen this chart before previously. This is what we call the spaghetti chart internally in the office. This is a economic recovery chart that shows Wichita's growth and recovery kind of pre-pandemic, certainly, and even pre-recession compared to other metros. And the point of showing this, and we've used this a lot, was to convey, certainly pre-COVID, that our region is not recovering as fast as others. And there's lots of reasons for that. Some of it's the makeup of our industries and our economy. Some of it is just real estate dynamics that were at play. But a small part of it could have been, a portion of it could have been our economic incentive tools hadn't been modified and updated in quite some time. And obviously, like any other trend, things change over time, and then we have to keep up with kind of the latest, most successful, most beneficial tools that are out there. So we'll go into all of this. Certainly, we haven't updated this slide and this graphic for the COVID era, because obviously all of those metros and all those lines would shoot down off the page. But really makes the point to say that something needed to change, something needed to give. Your summary document in your packets describes some of the background as well, but just to kind of reset the history there a little bit for you. Going back to 2004, you voted policy before that, but going even back to 2004, there's been a joint shared policy with the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County. We very much appreciate that as your contract outside economic development agency, because that helps provide that continuity, that there's not the confusion between one jurisdiction and the other, so that's very helpful. We supported with you all and your funding support and your leadership's team support the regional growth plan, which really updated kind of those targeted industries. What are we really trying to drive in our economy? And there was key initiatives around that, one of which was really looking at this policy and looking at these guidelines. And you can see there from the fall of 2018 through the fall of last year, really been kind of modifying and kind of continuing that discussion. Chairman Meitzner's been a part of that. Commissioner Dennis, I know, is a big part of that as well. And then through, since 2019, doesn't have it on the slide there, but the better part of this year, COVID delayed some of these conversations to some degree, but we've really been kind of putting these recommendations into policy, into actual guidelines for the policy that you've been operating off of. To step back a little bit, you remember me briefing you at the beginning of the year. It seems like that planning session we had out at WSU was 5 years ago, but that was just the beginning of the year, where we talked to you about kind of the recommendations from 80 Advantage. 80 was the firm that we hired to help us look from a national lens to see what tools and what approaches and economic development incentives are the most cutting edge, are the most beneficial both to the taxpayer but also to attract the industry that we want to see. So won't go through this slide. There was broad participation from the private sector in that. And again, including your team and your staff were heavily involved. I would also say that the City of Wichita staff was hugely helpful, and that Scott Rigby and Tig Goodpasture leaned into these conversations very, very heavily, especially over the last year, as did Joe Norton with Gilmore and Bell, your bond counsel as well. We'll go over the 80 process, but I did want you to see it was a very robust process. They compared our region and our county to other states and to other metros like ours. They came in town and they visited with not only you all as elected officials. If you remember, we met maybe a year and a half ago at our office to discuss with Chris Lloyd, the consultant that led this project, kind of the in-depth, what he's seen and hearing around incentives around the United States. They met with real estate professionals in the region. They met with, Scott Rigby met with WABA and the construction and development side. We met with cities and economic developers across the county. So there was a very robust feedback process that were in that kind of that three-step process. Some of their findings, I won't go through all of these, but just to kind of hit the highlights of the major findings that, again, 80 Advantage came in and did analysis and looked at our previous policy, or the policy that you all have on the books today. One of which was there was many instances throughout the policy that it exceeds the requirements that Kansas law requires. Sometimes for good reasons, but sometimes for unclear reasons. And so when we look at a competitive situation, do we need to be requiring things that are extra or more than what state law asks for? A big discussion item that we talked about, I know we talked quite a bit at length in January, about was the benefit to cost ratio. One of the ways that you all as elected officials measure all of the wide disparity of economic development projects. Some have lots of jobs, some have a few jobs, some have a major investment, some have relatively minor investment. So how to get a handle on that? Well, one of the ways objectively is through a benefit to cost analysis that is baked into an economic impact study that the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at WSU performs for us and for any tax abatement before you. Historically, we've required a 1.3 to 1 return before a tax abatement would be considered. It's a 30% higher return than what the costs that are calculated. That's a very high bar to clear. So that was something that the AD team pointed out, that not many places in America look at it that way. Again, citizens could be better informed about the incentives process. That's something we've heard across the country and that they heard across the country. Our current policy didn't make explicit links. It did in some regards, but didn't make explicit links to tying the incentives to the core industries that are really driving our economy and the industries that we want to see grow. Really trying to maximize the tools for the industries that have the most potential. Flexibility was key, but it did also, this analysis also pointed out where the Sedgwick County policy does very well. One of the things that they liked and has been a trend nationwide has been a trend away from kind of upfront incentives at the front end of a project and more post-performance, meaning a company commits to doing something, they perform that, they execute that with an investment or job creation, and then they get the benefit. Our tax abatement policy, your tax abatement policy does that very thing. So it was lauded as a good thing. And we talked about the regional growth plan. So those are some of just the recommendations and things that the 80 Advantage study saw. So they kind of prescribed going forward some ways that we could adapt our policy, which you know how, which Brent mentioned the city of Wichita has adopted and you have in front of you. So aligning our incentives to the regional growth plan and to those targeted industries, adapting the program structure, which is really kind of getting that little more streamlined, essentially. Benefit to cost ratio, evaluate that and maybe adjust that we just talked about. Post-performance to continue that, and then looking at different ways, unique ways for community reinvestment, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Educating stakeholders, that's something where not only you all as elected officials and county and city government have a role there, but we think we as the Greater Wichita Partnership have a role there as well of educating the business community about the benefits and the costs of incentives. Looking at the impact of incentives on small businesses. Oftentimes it's assumed that these tools are only for the biggest companies in town. It's really not the case, but maybe doing a better job of educating smaller businesses that there are instances and ways where these tools can be leveraged for their growth as well. And then certainly using incentives to attract and retain talent. So those were 80 Advantages recommendations. With not going through the whole 85 pages, I did want to kind of just highlight some of the areas that have been changed. And again, some of this was from the 80 work. Some of it was also derived from your staff and the City of Wichita staff's kind of chewing on this and kind of adjusting the policy that's been on the books. One of the biggest things to stress is the terminology away from a policy to guidelines, I think is very important. We think it's very important that you all as elected leaders have the flexibility that these are guidelines, these are what we're driving towards, but they're not hard and fast rules because every project is so different. So that's an important thing I think to note. But major changes, major recommendations in these new guidelines would be that the benefit cost ratio is adjusted from 1.3 to 1 to 1 to 1. That aligns more with what our competing cities and competing regions across the country are looking for. And I think it makes intuitive sense to the public that you all as elected officials, we're getting more over a benefit of 1 to 1, of we're getting more benefit than cost, but we don't have this arbitrary kind of 30% kind of high bar to clear. Adjusting the wage standards was a big component of the new policy as well. And the median wage terminology there is important because that matches up with the state of Kansas, the Kansas Department of Commerce's main incentive tool, which we often try to kind of layer and maximize these both state tools and local tools. One of their main programs uses median wage as a calculation. And so I think that'll be very helpful for companies to kind of simplify that process and not having to be looking at different types of wage standards that they're measuring themselves against. And then a scoring system. So the scoring system I did want to kind of highlight just a little bit because it is probably the most unique feature and probably the most tangible for applicants or for companies that are looking at a tax abatement. And we'll talk about a little bit about some other tools, but the primary tool, the primary local incentive tool that you all have in the county and that our cities in Sedgwick County have is property tax abatement. That's kind of the big left hook, kind of the main tool that you have at your discretion. So this new tax abatement I call it a matrix or kind of a scoring system, if you will. How does a company determine kind of the benefit that they get for what they're committing to or their investment? And you can see there's kind of, these are meant to be kind of cumulative, but there's a couple approaches to it. A job calculation. So that first column is for a company that's going to commit to create new jobs, net new jobs. Generally, we don't look at existing or retained jobs. That's on a case-by-case basis. But for new jobs of 5 to 25 employees, they'd be eligible for 30% tax abatement, just kind of right off the bat. Obviously, 26 to 50 is a little bit more, and then over 51 jobs committed is over 50%. Generally, these are also not just year one or day one or month one job commitments. Obviously, companies ramp up and take a little bit of time. We generally give some flexibility there, but we look at a 2 or 3 year window for that job creation is generally what is evaluated. In this policy, you guys don't look back until year 5, so there's even some flexibility there. But that's the kind of job calculation is based on those breakdowns. Capital investment, same thing, kind of from a commitment of anywhere from 1 to 5 million of new capital investment, new investment in the community, whether it's real estate, equipment, all of that spending makes that company committed to this geography, to Sedgwick County, so that's a good thing. And so those are meant to be cumulative. So a company that's going to create 20 jobs and $4 million investment gets the 30% tax abatement plus the 40% for their capital investment, so they're at 70% tax abatement. And then there's kind of these added bonuses, things that we're trying to pull them towards, getting companies to consider. Oh, I went too far. We're trying to kind of drive companies to these criteria at the bottom, kind of these bonus points, if you will. Is the company in a regional growth plan sector? Are they in aerospace? Are they in data and IT? Are they one of those industries that we're trying to drive forward? They would get an additional 10 points or 10%. Are they using state and federal or utility incentives? That's a new component from your policy previously, and we think it's really smart because what it does is it kind of asks that company to leverage their dollars, leverage your dollars better. It's not just rely on a local incentive, but to make sure you're getting an incentive from the state of Kansas or from an electric utility or a federal incentive like opportunity zones or new market tax credits, trying to maximize those local tax dollars. Investing in funding and entrepreneurship is certainly one, talent attraction, and then locating in a redevelopment area. Those are kind of special zones around primarily Wichita that are redevelopment areas. There's 2 that are not on here that the city staff, through their process, made really good recommendations to add that I was remiss in adding to this, but sustainability, that if a company is committing to sustainable improvements, sustainable development of their facility, that would add a 15% kind of extra bonus points, if you will, and then community and workforce benefits would add 25%. And that's really meant to look at those companies that maybe they're not paying as high a wage or that wage is a little bit lower, but they're hiring disadvantaged workers. They're hiring people from the offender program. Those folks that are a little bit harder to hire, they can get an additional benefit. So that's kind of the scoring matrix. That's meant to kind of be cumulative. I'll go quickly here. There were some other minor recommendations to the policy now guidelines itself. Some things that really just kind of clean up some language. Sales tax only request. Property tax abatements that are coming in for sales tax only were treated with a very similar process. This was to adjust that. Those are generally simpler, easier processes to go through for your staff. Defining what those special redevelopment areas are, it was a little unclear in the previous policy. We've cleaned that up. Again, you can kind of just see some tightening of language and kind of legalese is really what these other recommendations are. Lastly, we did spend some time with both 80 Advantage and as a kind of working group over the last year and a half with what I'll call development incentives. So what I just got done talking about was our tax abatement, which is, again, our big left hook for mainly primary industries, so your manufacturers, your office, your headquarters. There are development incentives. Tax increment financing would be probably the best example. Community improvement districts, there are others. Those are probably less common to be used outside of Wichita, but certainly used in other communities. Could be used in unincorporated parts of the county. So there were some recommendations there, but for time's sake, I won't go into those unless there's questions. But kind of cleaning up some of the things about our development incentives, particularly around TIF and CID and some of those policies. So that's a quick recap of probably 2.5 years worth of work. And again, you all have participated at various levels for that. So happy to answer questions. But again, we just appreciate your guys' consideration. What this does is this makes us more competitive, kind of really refining and sharpening. And I wouldn't say that our tools were bad. They just needed a little, maybe there was a rough edge. And this really just helped to sharpen and hone those. And we feel, I know your process and your work is taken up, and I know next on the agenda is still so much about the public health crisis, but we were really hopeful that this will help us propel out of that public health crisis. Having these economic incentive tools will help us, and already has helped us, recruit companies and help companies expand that are going to be employing people to help one more way to get us out of this crisis. So again, thank you for the time. Thank you for your guys' investment. You all were heavily involved, both individually, but then financially and in these studies and this analysis, and certainly on behalf of the Greater Wichita Partnership. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. You're right, this has been a few years in the work, and I do recall at our workshop that you were able to explain that, and I was able to kind of team with you because I was freshly involved in this, and from my perspective, for my fellow commissioners, and I think David Dennis was involved as well, but this was sorely needed to take our region into a competitive environment in a respectful way. I love the look back that we're doing and things like that. So there's some real disciplines and real good stuff there. And the city of Wichita has already approved this, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And they've already, I understand there's already been a couple of opportunities that are already taken advantage of this, that it's just in the Wichita.
Yes, sir. In the Wichita proper, they've used it, I think, twice. I don't quote me on that, but I want to say at least twice they've used it. And then I was remiss in saying, so this, not only you setting this policy for the county, but then also it has certainly a good ripple effect across the county and the other communities. So Valley Center is right now evaluating this document as well and looking at it and kind of updating their process. We've spoken with, I think it's fine to share Clearwater, Bel Air, and Park City, all three of those communities. We've had multiple conversations with each of those. I don't know where they stand with their elected officials, if they've scheduled time to update their electeds yet, but I know that each of those cities are also evaluating their incentive tools largely with this document.
Right. Got a couple comments, Commissioner Glasscock.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the regional growth plan. You mentioned different sectors. You had mentioned aerospace. Is there a component for diversification, or is there an incentive if somebody wants to bring a diverse industry to the market?
Yeah, so our regional growth plan, quickly, that's another couple 100-page document, but there's built off 7 target industries, major industries. Aerospace is one of them, but even aerospace itself, as you said, is a very wide industry and very diverse in and of itself. So within aerospace, the regional growth plan has called for us to diversify most specifically, and we're interested in any investment by a company, but most specifically in 2 sectors of aerospace, namely maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So that's the service side of aerospace, and then also kind of design and engineering and production of aerospace. What we've seen recently, a lot of activity is in rotorcraft helicopters. Bell's presence in the community is helping us get into some conversations there. Space is something that we're interested in. So there's a number of those subsets. But yes, to answer your question, this policy would allow us to then incentivize those new diversified aerospace opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you for that question. And then the second one I have is about the talent attraction commitment. Is that talent from outside of the region coming in? Is that the commitment?
That's the goal. That's the idea. The requirement there would be that the company delineates and specifies exactly what they're committing to, rather than just kind of a generic, yes, we want to if we can, if the right person applies for our open position. I think the goal there is to get the company to, and each company and how they do recruiting, are they largely recruiting local staff? Is their type of operation, their type of business, the type of labor that they need, the type where they got to bring people in? Is there a certain university somewhere in America that they're pulling talent from? So I think it would be wise to leave it open-ended, but yes, I think generally the idea is to encourage companies with incentives to hire people from the outside. Obviously, we want Sedgwick County citizens to get jobs as well, but it's a good thing if our community grows and we have people coming in as well.
Thank you for your presentation today.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the presentation. I see on one of the early slides that the Strategic Advisory Team Committee met basically from the spring through fall of 2019. I am curious, how are and I appreciate having commissioners sit on that team. That's very good. How were those commissioners chosen? Is that something the commission did, or is that something that you guys selected those members?
We do not select the members, sir. My understanding of the process historically has been that the chairman, we work with the chairman's office to make sure who's representing the commission on that committee. It's a subcommittee. Not a subcommittee. It's a committee of the partnership's board of directors. So we reach out each year to the chairman and correspondingly to the mayor across the street, and they kind of work out participation.
And then the chairman selected the second member. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, historically, yes.
Just, I guess, a comment. I would like to have awareness, I guess, of what committees are out there, because this is one of those things that the fact that it's happening is very good, but it might be useful to have commissioners' awareness so that we can interface with those people and make sure that our views are also being represented in some way. We have some awareness of what the discussions are. I think there's relevance that needs to float back to their other commissioners. I don't think that actually happened. And so this is very mature.
Sure.
The fact that it's a complete project, that Wichita has already voted on this, it doesn't really leave us much latitude to make any changes at this point, which is disappointing, actually. But anyway, I do have a couple of questions. So when you calculate the abatement recommendations, those are all additive. If it gets to something more than 100%, is that just cap at 100%?
Yes, sir.
And for how many years? How's that determined for how many years it's abated?
The policy, the guidelines speak to the maximum term under state law is 10 years. That would be at the discretion of the elected body at any given time. I'm trying to think back through, and Brent would know too. I don't know of any very many that are less than 10 years. But the way the policy actually works is you grant a 5-year tax abatement, and then there's an analysis done at the end of the 5th year to determine, did the company meet the requisite job and capital investment and now going forward these other criteria, did they meet those? And then that second 5 year is granted. So historically, I think the predominance of the tax abatements you've done have been for the full 10 years that state law allows. But certainly there's always flexibility if, for whatever reason, the project might only be 7 years. You would have the flexibility to offer something less. I would tell you, being in economic development in the state, almost every city that I'm aware of in the state of Kansas uses that full 10 years. In fact, the state of Missouri, their tool goes 20 years. So there's actually a disconnect there, and a competitive disconnect between Kansas and Missouri. There's quite a bit more term that's allowed for tax abatement on the Missouri side, and of course every state's different, but most do 10 years.
So the vehicle for the abatement, it's not, is this something other than a TIF?
Yes, sir.
It's just called an abatement.
So there's two different forms of tax abatement. There's industrial revenue bonds, which is a funding mechanism, and then there's the economic development exemption, EDX. That's an exemption that's specified in state statute. So there's two different types. They're structured a little different, but two different methods to do the tax abatement.
Just to FYI, I guess my thought is we haven't talked about EDX on this side of the street very much. Rarely that term ever comes up. IRBs we do quite a lot.
Yes, sir.
IRBs are typically mostly geared towards industrial type things like manufacturing, for example.
I would agree, yes.
So if someone came over here and they wanted to, say, create a hotel, for example, in the unincorporated, so it'd be a county potentially we might consider it incentive in that case. Would they try to get an IRB potentially in that situation?
I believe they could. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe they could. They would not be eligible under EDX because EDX, you're correct, those are far fewer in frequency, but they're more limited in terms of what state statute allows the industry to apply for. So I know a hospitality hotel would not be eligible there. I believe, I know IRBs are more restricted with retail, so it would come down to a function of, is a hotel classified as a retail business versus hospitality. But
so I think in my opinion, most of the time that we would see that come to us as a TIF opportunity. So it'd be a district around some area of properties. It might include multiple properties.
More than likely.
And that has a lot of aspects to what a TIF is and all that stuff. CIDs, we don't have that here in the county. It's just people are wondering about CID. We don't have that as an option.
That's why I kind of glossed over it. It's not utilized very heavily.
What about forgivable loans? Is that still something we're not considering any longer still, I assume? But you haven't talked about that?
Yeah, so to that point, so the AD Advantage, the consultant that we hired to kind of look nationwide, they actually came back to us and lauded Sedgwick County for kind of being a little bit ahead of the curve in the sense that many places in America, Texas is probably most famous for it, for having these large cash funds and providing upfront cash-like incentives to companies on the hope that they perform. The trend nationwide, and I'm not saying that there aren't places that do it. We just lost a project about a week and a half ago to a place that had a big cash fund, and it's frustrating for us. But the trend nationwide is to move away from that, and not necessarily away from cash, but to move away from that upfront and hope that the return happens. You do see places, whether it's localities, counties, and then states have cash where they dispense that over a period of years. This policy does not get into the utilization of cash and kind of that type of approach. On one hand, I could say that would be helpful. On the other hand, I think having this tool will really sharpen our toolbox and help us close some of the projects and some of the activity we're seeing. So I wouldn't sit here and say that we have to have that. I don't think that's true. At the same time, having more competitive tools is always a good thing.
So there's two sides of this coin, and number one, we like to see people come to our community and invest in our community and create new jobs. It's always a good thing. Sometimes we need to get involved in these types of tools to encourage that to happen, and I totally understand. I think every community does that type of thing, so it's not different. We shouldn't be different than everybody else. I think we should be in the same game. On the other hand, the other side of the coin, of course, is, we talk about free and fair markets. If I use back my hotel example, a lot of hotels out there, they've existed in our community for a long time, and they're paying their taxes. They don't have any incentives left for them. At the end of the day, everyone needs to be put onto that same playing field at some point. So there's a red carpet, but eventually it's got to turn into, you're part of our community, and we want to treat you the same as everybody else. Sure. So the reality is that when you abate one property, someone else is going to pay that tax on behalf of that. So we have to be very careful how we do this. I think overall this has been a pretty good change, and so I think I'll support the recommendation this morning. But I just want to share my concern about how these things can be abused. Obviously, thank you. Sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Andrew, for being here today. I think the biggest thing that you mentioned to me, or you mentioned in your presentation, was applying incentives to help small business. Over the past couple of days and weeks, really, I've been really focused on economic development and really understanding the scope of how COVID has changed things. And when we look at some of the research, approximately 47% of private sector is small business. And here locally, I think it's important that if there's help available, communicating that so that people can take advantage of those opportunities. The other thing I like is the guidelines rather than hard and fast rules. I've never really understood the 1 to 3 ratio. You mentioned arbitrary. I think that this clears that up. When it comes to government as a whole, I feel like there's a lot of things that people don't understand, and so therefore it's making it easier to understand, making it simpler for companies to come here, making it simpler for small businesses to thrive is absolutely what we want to do. So I'm excited about this, and I think heading into 2021, economic development, supporting those people that are here is absolutely what we have to do. I can name off 4 or 5 individuals who have left, and I don't want to see any more people leave, right? Yeah. Our biggest export is talented people leaving our community, and at the end of the day, we don't want that. So, Andrew, I'm excited about what the partnership is doing. I know that you guys are very creative in your thinking. I know that you're always looking for opportunities to think outside the box. That's very exciting. So I appreciate this presentation, and I am absolutely supportive of this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis, did you have anything?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. First of all, this chart, I guess you can't see it the way that, but the spaghetti chart is the main reason that we took a look at what we were doing, because if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to keep having the same results and they're not working. So I appreciate the fact that the GWP went out and hired the 80 company to take a look at what other communities are doing across the nation, to make sure, see why that they're up at the top of that spaghetti chart and we're at the very bottom of the spaghetti chart. I actually, to answer one of Commissioner Howell's questions, when we started this study, I was the chairman, and Commissioner Meitzman was the vice chairman, and that's why we moved forward that direction. I served on as chairman, while you serve on the board of directors for the GWP. And so I was very familiar with what they were doing as a member of the GWP board. This project has not been taken lightly. It spanned over several years to get to the point we are now, but we recognize that we have to do something different. I sincerely appreciate the time and effort that GWP put into this. People like Brent Shelton that advised us along the way, that helped out the city of Wichita, and all of the other board members that took a look at what we can do differently. And so I strongly support what the outcome of this was, and do believe that we need to adopt this. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't see other comments, and with that, I'll make a motion to approve the the incentive program as presented.
Second.
Second.
A motion and a second. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Thanks again, Andrew, for your, and I will see you this evening on another opportunity. Okay. Let's bring that one home, let's hope. Okay. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item F, discussion of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act.
Chairman and Commission, good morning. Tom Stolz, County Manager. Just to lay the groundwork for the CARES item today, there'll be 3 votes and 2 receive and files. Brent will get up first and present external funding programs and ask for a approval of a payment that will require a vote. He will then give an update on safe operating grants and workforce development reports that will be receive and file. Lindsay will get up and talk about a CARES payment request regarding WSU MDL. That will require a vote, and then she'll give an update on all of the rest of COVID spending status, which will be receive and file. And then she'll conclude with a CARES spending plan and a 1230 processing plan, which will require a vote. So, Brent, start us off.
Hi, Brent, again.
Good morning again. For the record, Brent Shelton, your Deputy CFO. As the manager mentioned, this morning we have one item that will request a vote for. The other 2 will be receive and file. They're just reports on funds that are going out the door. So to begin with, let's talk about the external funding for our public health and social service agencies. And this morning, you were just given a spreadsheet. These were just completed last evening. And we're going to request that this morning that you approve funding $144,279.70 to 4 different public health and social service agencies. I'll walk you through one of them and the process that we've gone through to get to this point so you understand why some are being fully funded and some are not at this point. So let's take the first one on your list, which is the Kansas Food Bank Warehouse. The food bank was recommended for a $500,000 award from the Financial Stimulus Review Team. That award was then approved by the Board of County Commissioners. The food bank then went out and began to expand their food distribution program to meet the needs that were resulted in extra expenses on their part due to COVID. They've subsequently filed with us 2 monthly reports, their October activity and their November activity. The November report was due last Friday and was filed on time. So the award that we're asking you to fund this morning, the $36,720, represents the funding that has gone through the audit process on the October report. Their November report, which is will be their final report, is a request for the balance of that $500,000 award that they've been given. So we will come back to you once that's gone through the audit process. The receipts have been verified for that additional $460-some thousand. The other 3 on your list, the Wichita Metro Crime Commission had one program for $10,000. They have expended those funds. We've gone through the information and have approved that to be fully funded at this point. Air Capital Charities, doing business as the Wichita Open, their original grant award was the $21,800. At the end of their October time period, they had spent $21,105.70. That's been vetted by the auditors and is ready for approval. And then the final on the list, Wichita Presbyterian Manor, for $76,454. That one we've reviewed their October and their November reports, and they are fully approved and recommended for you to approve those to be funded. So that's the process that we're going through at this point. Anytime we've approved a monthly report, that's what's going to come before you as we request you fund those awards.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. I don't see any questions. I'll make a motion to approve these these four items as presented.
David Dennis has a question.
Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you, and I'll second that motion, but I do have one question, and it's not related to these three grants, but as long as we got you up there, I can ask the question. We gave $5,000 to CAPS in Clendenin. Have we asked for that back?
We have not yet asked for that back. They are being reviewed as part of a random review process, so we'll be looking at that. There was an open records request for that information yesterday. They have filed expenditure reports and proof of those expenses, and I can't tell you at this point what the disposition of that is. Because I don't know. Not that I won't tell you, but I just don't know at this point.
I appreciate it, but I think we need to ask them for the money back. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Motion carries. All right, next up, safe operating grants. Okay.
Just
This will be a receive and file, correct?
This is receive and
Right,
file, yes,
okay.
sir. As you recall, we had 2014 applications that were received as of the cutoff of this program at the end of November. As we've gone through and eliminated duplicative applications, we now have 1,468 applications that are unique and non-duplicative. So at this point, it looks like there'll be about $7.2 million in total awards out of this program. And at the end of business yesterday, we had written checks to 1,085 grantees for a total of $5,302,285.
Okay. Make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on safe operating grants. I don't see other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Next up. Lindsay, I always wonder when you bring up a big stack of papers.
I have to be ready for you all. Okay. Here are my speaking points. That's just in case.
Okay, all right.
So for the record, Lindsay Poruso, your CFO, as Tom outlined, the first item we will start with is actually a vote to approve payment. And so I had sent you all a note yesterday, basically outlining where we stand in that reconciliation process for WSU's Molecular Diagnostic Laboratory. And so at this point, we are to the stage where we would recommend your approval of payment out of the total $4 million allocated of $627,479.20. That would bring our total paid to $3,882,635, leaving a remaining balance to still be reconciled of $117,365. But I think you all have seen some correspondence between our consultants and WSU in the last day or so that essentially gives us some reassurance that we're well on the path to get there. So I am optimistic that the next time we meet next Tuesday, we'll be in a position to hopefully make that full reimbursement. Just as a reminder, you all did approve a contract amendment that does extend the timeline out to that date, so that's why we're still talking about it then. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, for this particular item, I would recommend that you authorize that payment to WSU.
Okay. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Lindsay, for that. I wanted to, again, commend the team. We've continued to meet numerous times. I actually had correspondence with them even this morning, and I know they have submitted another $135,000 worth of documentation to the reviewers, and they're reviewing that right now, which exceeds $117,000 and change as you just mentioned a minute ago. So that'll get us over the $4 million, and right now the ball appears to be not in WSU's camp. It seems to be in the reviewers' camp, and we have some confidence that that'll be complete, hopefully, possibly today or tomorrow. If not, if we have any hiccups, we can certainly work on this up through Monday. So anyway, I just want to say, it looks to me like the challenge was how to get $4 million. We're going to get there and exceed it. Well, with documentation, it can exceed that. Looks like that'll certainly happen. We're very, very close. I would make a motion we would approve the $627,479.20 payment to WSU for this payment. Thank you.
I'll second that. Okay. Motion and a second. I don't see other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye.
Okay, thank
Motion
you.
carries. Thank you.
So now we'll move to the CARES spending update. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of break this week, and because you had the election update, we're only going to talk about county COVID spending. So hopefully this will go a little bit more quickly, because then we're going to dive into this lovely item that you see on the screen about the spending plan. So we are, as of today, or I'm sorry, as of yesterday at 5 p.m., at $64,053,218 in terms of total spent on COVID-19. Now, of course, that includes all funding sources. So it's our county general fund, the fire general fund, and then CARES. So we are down slightly in the general fund to $1.35 million because of an order that was canceled, and so we were able to cancel that and get those funds back, essentially. We are at $39,541 in the fire general fund. That is up $3,429 for technology expenses that we weren't confident would be eligible under CARES. And then we're at $58,000 still in the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund for cleaning services. We have talked about that repeatedly for several months now. So then let's move to CARES. So again, the county received a direct allocation. Of that direct allocation, as of today, we're at $54,229,350. And that is up significantly from where we were last week when we were at $44.8 million. And the bulk of that is because of the City of Wichita payment that you approved last week. Now, in addition, we are up to, within that total amount I just listed of $54.2 million, we are at $35,294,172 to support county needs. So internal to the county or testing services like we have with the WSU agreement. That's up about $780,000 from last week. $88,235 was for that Family First Coronavirus Relief Act leave. So that's down from where we were the last time we spoke. So that's a relatively good sign for our workers. We spent another $89,000 for CARES personnel. We made another $200,000 payment to CRL, which is again the saliva testing lab. We had $116,000 for cleaning services, $124,000 for equipment like sanitation carts, fit testing equipment, and things like that. We have encumbered $30,000 for single audit expenses. So we must have a single audit as a part of CARES. CARES recent guidance in October allows us to pay that money outside of the December 30th window. So that single audit won't actually start until January-ish. And so we'll be allowed to pay those costs as long as we have them basically earmarked now. And so we have taken this step to earmark those funds. We also had the $54,000 for the antimicrobial paint you all approved last week for the sheriff, $9,000 for cleaning supplies, and $29,000 for health department supplies. So quite a bit of spending there. For CARES funding to external agencies, this again is where we saw the big increase. We're up to $18,935,178 there. Again, a big chunk of that was the $8,253,655 that you approved to City of Wichita last week. We have now paid the 2 vendors for public health and social services, subrecipients that you approved last week for just under $13,000. We have now moved out of Spark funding and into county CARES funding for the safe operating grants. And so we're at about $309,000 paid there. And then we are now up to $244,471 paid on behalf of the African American Council of Elders as their paying agent. And so that includes invoices for things like the project coordination work, marketing, media ad buys, and things like that. So we started with $99,636,917. We have spent that $54,229,350. So we are at $45,407,567 technically remaining. Of our Spark spending, we received $9.3 million from the state. We are up to $7,957,510 there. Again, the bulk of that is on safe operating grants. We have depleted that funding for safe operating grants now, and the rest was basically on PPE kits. We do still have some held back for workforce development. Those reports are in and are being reviewed, and so we'll begin coming to you for actual payment of those soon. We already talked about elections, so that is my spending update for you, and I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, I recommend you receive and file that particular report.
Okay. Again, thank you, Lindsay. Very thorough report and the update. These numbers are almost starting to make sense to us all. So thank you.
Just in time.
I'll make a motion to receive and file. Don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Lindsay?
Okay, the
Excellent.
final portion of the CARES plan is to adopt a new spending plan. So this is something we have been talking about really since you adopted the last one on September 23rd. So you have seen multiple iterations of this. I sent an email last night. I will tell you there's been one adjustment to that since last night, and that is what Brent reported out as the safe operating grants, that we expect the total to be $7.2 million. So I did adjust down that safe operating grant figure, and that difference is now reflected over in that bright yellow cell. So that is the only change from what you all saw last night. So just to review, we have buckets, essentially, are what we're calling them, where the commissioners have authorized the $99.6 million that was awarded to the county to be spent on certain types of priorities. Those priorities were initially based on needs assessments, not just from county departments, but also from the community. And so the original spending plan that was adopted back in July morphed in September. And so what you'll see in the column here is the 923 County CARES spending plan. That was where we thought, based on what we had understood about county needs and community needs and testing, about where we would be. Since then, we have had a lot more time, and we have learned that every day matters, and things change from a day-to-day basis. And so what you'll see in the column next to it is actually how much we've spent or contractually obligated ourselves to spend. So we're at $79.6 million of the $99.6 million that has already been formally committed in one fashion or another. And so that leaves some spending plan remaining as of the spending that we had last weekend to figure out exactly where that's going to go. Now you will see in that spending plan remaining column, there are some red numbers. That essentially means that we overspent the plan. Not necessarily a bad thing, because these were all priorities that were identified from the beginning. These are all necessary items. But some of that funding does need to go to adjusting those buckets so that you all have formally blessed that spending plan that then we will then report on to the Treasury. So what you see in the bright blue column is what we propose to you for approval today. The most significant change, of course, is testing. As we know, State Spark has come up and is paying for much of the community testing, maybe not the health department testing, but other tests. We also know that it took us a while to get everything up and running. We didn't quite get the sampling that we wanted at the level in the community, and so though that was the highest priority that was identified early on by commissioners, by the community, by educators and businesses, this is where we sit. And so as of right now, we're at about $10.9 million of funding that was dedicated there. So the biggest change you'll see is the decrease in the spending plan amount there to $11.5 million. On the courts, we had set aside some significant funding. This is another big change. Unfortunately, we just didn't have really the capacity, I think, to get all of the projects done that maybe would want to be done within the time frame that we had. And so you all did approve a few weeks ago some changes to the first floor treasurer space to accommodate traffic court. That is being funded from here. A lot of the work that's being done throughout the facility to make remote court possible is also being paid from here, but we just didn't need as much funding as we thought. And then, of course, you can see the rest of the adjustments. None of those are as big, so I'd be happy to address anything that you have questions about, but I don't want to necessarily get into the details of every line. I think the rows I would like to focus on next are the external funding toward the bottom. You can see that cities, we do have one city that's not going to be able to spend all of its money. They have notified us of that, so we've reallocated those funds. We have public health and social service that we knew would go over, so this corrects for them. For workforce, we actually have some projects coming in right now that did not fully expend the awards, but those monthly reports continue to come in. And then finally, for safe operating grants, like I said, we've adjusted that down to what we expect the number to look like. The bright yellow cell is what I'd most like to call your attention to. So essentially what we are doing in this spending plan is adding some personnel reimbursement for our frontline public health and public safety agencies. The benefit of doing that is that it reimburses those funds with those workers to offset those costs, which was something that Treasury allowed back in September. What that will do is essentially increase the fund balance in those funds at the end of the year, how much cash we can carry forward. And of course, we're mindful of that as we continue to face uncertainty with COVID-19 response itself, plus our long-term impact. And so what that does is it allows us to not have to cut service at a time when we know services are most needed in our community. And so that is why we're making that recommendation that we are. So as we get closer to the 12/30 deadline, and I say closer, it's only 2 weeks away, you can see it in the weather forecast now, which was a little startling to me this morning. So we would ask you to authorize two things today as a part of this spending plan, recognizing that you still meet next Tuesday. So not only would we ask you to approve this spending plan, I would ask that you authorize the county manager to make necessary adjustments to the spending plan as needed, that you authorize him to award payments to approved public health, social service, and city entities. So you've already set the contracts and the maxes. This would allow the payment to actually go out. And then essentially authorize us to carry forward any remaining budget authority. So we talked about that $30,000 single audit cost. We would ask you to allow us to carry that budget authority forward into 2021. So all of this would be moot until 12/22, but as soon as that meeting concludes, we would ask for you to take that action today as a part of the spending plan so that we're in a position to make those adjustments as needed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I recommend that you approve the spending plan, authorize time to make those decisions as outlined, and authorize us to carry forward budget authority.
Right, okay, Lindsay, thank you. So the request is for us to, basically, we're kind of readjusting the buckets,
Yes,
the balances of the buckets.
Yes, exactly right.
And it was a best guess when we did it originally, and it's another best guess in September when we made a few changes. So thank you for this. And then the only other caveat would be that because of, I think it's mainly a timing issue and a efficiency issue, if we authorize with these buckets, we authorize the county manager to work with finance under these guidelines to go ahead and do the authorizations as they pop up, and so we can get the checks out the door. Is that?
Yes, please, that's perfect.
I just said it in layman's terms. I'm not a finance person. Okay, so I don't know. Commissioner Dennis, did you have a question? No?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I will make a motion that we approve the 1216 spending plan as proposed and authorize the county manager to have the authority to execute the spending.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other comments? I don't see any. Thank you again, Lindsay. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. And I will just make a comment, as I spoke to Lindsay earlier, we only have 2 more weeks, then we don't have to CARES no more in 2 more weeks. Okay? All right. Yeah, no, sorry. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item G, report of the Boards of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on December 10th, 2020.
Good morning, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioners. Josh Lauber, Senior Buyer with Purchasing. The meeting of Board and Bids and Contracts held on December 10th, 2020 resulted in 3 items for your consideration. Item 1, Government Relations and Consulting Services for various departments. The recommendation is to establish contract pricing based on the City of Wichita contract RQ 840681 with Thorn Run Partners, LLC through January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. Item number 2, emergency vehicle parts for fleet management. The recommendation is accept the overall low bid meeting specifications from Moonshine Engine and Generator for an initial purchase of $85,307 and establish contract pricing for 2 years with 3 one-year options to renew. And finally, item number 3, recommended 2021 recommended insurance renewals for risk management. The recommendation is to accept the insurance premium renewals as listed for an estimated total cost of $1,457,510. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of these 3 items.
Okay, thank you for presenting. Is there any questions on the items from the bid board? I don't see any. I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Aye. Chairman Meitzner?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item H, compensation update.
Okay, Manager Stoltz.
Well, I think it's afternoon now, so good afternoon, Commissioners. Tom Stoltz, County Manager, here this morning to talk about a compensation update. Commissioners, last March, as we began to roll through the COVID crisis, the county took a number of proactive actions to try to stem the tide of the budget. First of all, we deferred commodity and contractual purchases that were non-essential or non-emergency, pushed that down the road as far as we possibly could, put a hiring freeze on unless absolutely necessary for acute crisis. We conducted limited furloughs, as you remember, in April and May. We stopped the 1.25% strategic pay adjustment due to employees in 2020. That was about a $1.8 million line item in the budget. And we made a decision very early to freeze wages in 2021 because as we anticipated the COVID response, we knew this was not going to be over in the year 2020. We knew we were going to have to reconcile this into 2021. It is frightening and uncertain times for many. As we worked through the year and restrictions began to somewhat lift, the economy, though still struggling and in some areas greatly struggling, was not as bad as predicted. CARES dollars became available for support of essential items of testing, PPEs, staffing costs, and emergency personnel. And we have kept a close eye from the middle of May to now on budget and costs and have tried our best to predict outcomes not only for 2020 but for 2021 as well as the virus continues to impact this community. As such, the leadership team feels a small bit of confidence here at year's end that we could return some of the 1.25% compensation that was due to employees back to them in a one-time bonus of $300 to employees within the organization. The concept of a bonus, of course, means that it is a one-time payment and will not carry through into their salary into 2021 and beyond. And in the next upcoming fiscal year, as we have talked about several times during today's meeting, has many unknowns in it yet. The cost of this one-time bonus for the organization would be $900,000, which is roughly half of the 1.25% that we'd originally allocated by budget. Additionally, this bonus will not be given to elected officials or appointed officials, contracted employees, or the manager's office, or any of my direct divisional reports. We are not eligible for this bonus. Originally, as the finance and HR staff began to examine this possibility a few weeks ago, we discussed the potential of limiting this bonus to employees who earn less than a certain threshold, $50,000, $40,000, $60,000. We began to look at the dynamics of that. This was not workable due to the logistics of the payroll system, the short timeline, the lateness in the year, and the amount of work that our payroll staff is having to manage with CARES and COVID and all the other issues that have been thrown onto them, and other tax and governance rules that we would have had to negotiate. So it's doable to give the bonus in the way we have proposed logistically. As you consider this, I think it is important to remember that this money was originally intended to go to the employees as part of a wage earning at the beginning of the year. We are simply recommending that we reinstate some of it in a bonus format. We feel our leadership team feels our employees have gone above and beyond in this year and continue to do so in this crisis year, and so many of our employees are public forward, face forward in a time of a pandemic. This bonus in no way stops discussions that we have had during our recent weeks and the upcoming budget planning regarding salary and wages of this organization. I think we all know that large segments of this organization are substantially below market in pay and wages, and this must be reconciled through a comprehensive and strategic plan. We intend to talk about it with you during the retreat coming up after the first of the year and the 2022 budget process. For today, Commission, I would ask that you please consider approval of the one-time bonus for the employees mentioned above to be paid out on their December 24th paycheck. And I stand for any questions, as do other members of the leadership team in this room.
Okay, thank you, Tom, for the explanation. And I know we've been briefed a little bit individually, and so there's a couple of questions here. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't really have any questions. I've been thoroughly briefed on this, and from day one as a commissioner, I have vowed to support the staff and the people who work for Sedgwick County. And especially during this pandemic, our public servants have gone above and beyond and worked hours that are unimaginable. And I just want to say that I wish we could do more. Quite frankly, I wish that we could give them a raise next year. I wish that we could do, I just wish that we could do more. So I am 100% supportive of this. And I appreciate you guys doing all that you can to find it in this budget to give just a little token, at least, during this time. I just want to reiterate, though, for anybody who's watching, that this is not going to elected officials. This is not going to public officials. This is not even going to the manager's office, who has worked an incredibly long hours, I know, this year as well. So I am supportive of this, and I thank you for bringing it to us as a small token of appreciation to those public servants who have really gone above and beyond this year.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Commissioner. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Manager, for the presentation. When I talked with you about this in a meeting you and I had, I was presented a spreadsheet that would show the estimated cost of doing this. And I don't remember that number you just quoted a moment ago. You said about $900,000 is the cost for this. That's not the number I remember seeing on that spreadsheet.
I'll bring Lindsay up to address that, Commissioner, but the number that, and I had her just check it this morning, the number of estimated cost would be $901,443.
Okay.
Hello again, Commissioners. Lindsay Peruso, CFO. For the record, so Commissioner, I think probably what you're thinking about when we spoke was the focus on the county's general fund. And we had highlighted that would be $518,585. But that $900,000 encompasses all operating for the funds for the county, including those COVID positions that we have on the staffing table.
And we, just to, I hate to make you put you on the spot here, but we talked about this would be paid out of ending balances in the current year's budget. Correct? And none of the budgets that we know of right now would go underwater with this proposal.
Correct. We have looked at the actual forecasts and modeled all of this out against each fund. All funds can support it budgetarily because of the 1.25% pool, and all funds can support it with their fund balance.
Okay, and there was another number discussed, which I won't mention yet, but I'll just say that there was another number just a little bit different than this one that also would have kept all those balances above zero. Is that correct?
It would have been able to have been supported, yes.
Okay. I'll just say, number one, I'm certainly, I understand this is not as good as a raise. The 1.25% next year would have been a lot better, but this is better than nothing. And I think that our strategy here is better than a percent bonus, because this especially helps out folks that are making a little bit less money than our average. And so for those people that are kind of on the lower end of the pay scale, this will help them out more than a percent raise would potentially, at least in a one-year basis here. I would just say this: I would much rather see us go for the other number, and I don't know if my colleagues know what I'm talking about here. I don't know, but I would like to make a motion for that at some point here before we vote. But I think we can afford that in terms of I think there's money in the budget to do that, and the employees need the money. And so I would rather see us consider the other number. Thank you.
Commissioner Glasscock.
Thank you. And I want to just reiterate all of Commissioner Cruz's comments. After touring many of our departments over the county the past few weeks, and recognizing our 3,000 employees here at the county work incredibly hard, and I wish we could do more, and I wish we could invest more as well. And I think this will be a huge asset not only to those receiving the funds, but those in our community where we're giving our employees this $300 that we're pushing out before the holidays, that they can either save themselves or reinvest and purchase and spend in our community as well. And so I just want to reiterate that I'm very supportive of this, and I wish we could do more. And hopefully this is a small token of appreciation to everybody in the county that's worked so hard. And this is going to our EMS, this is going to our fire, this is going to the Department of Corrections, this is going to frontline workers, election office workers, everybody that's put in incredible time and energy during this pandemic to help our community. I think this is the least we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dennis.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Manager Stoltz, is this in our budget for 2020?
What was this exact configuration is not. What was in the budget was the 1.25% strategic salary increase for employees that we froze back in March.
Okay. Is there a possibility that as we get into the next year, we could consider it at that time rather than at this time?
I will let Lindsay come to the podium, but that is a negative, sir, due to that money would stay in the 2020 budget. You guys have already approved the 2021 budget in August, which we don't have authority in that next year to do. And let me have Lindsay come clarify that for you, sir.
So Tom doesn't give himself enough credit. He did a pretty good job explaining that. So in 2020, we did have the 1.25 personnel authority in place. What we do not have in 2021 is personnel authority, the spending authority. Because we did not have a pay pool or a contingency tied to a pay pool like we did in 2020, essentially we would have to see kind of partway through the year how we were doing budgetarily, and we would almost have to intentionally make reductions elsewhere to be able to free up the budget authority to be able to pay this across all funds.
One other question, Lindsay, while you're there.
Yes, sir.
If we spend this $900 and some $1,000, that's $900 and some $1,000 we don't have available next year, correct?
That's true.
Very good. Well, just a couple points. First of all, we just had a briefing earlier today that we have a liability for $1.1 million for the arena that we didn't plan on. And we've got $900 some $1,000 we could carry forward and maybe help pay for that, but no, we're going to spend it here. Another thing that I was concerned about was if we could give this money to only people that made under $50,000. And where did I come up with that number? Well, the median income in the city of Wichita is $51,000. But unfortunately, I was told that we can't give it to people that earn under $50,000. So what's the impact of that? Well, 716 of our employees make over $50,000. 45 of them make over 100,000. 30 of them make over 90,000. 89 make over 80,000. 73 make over 70,000. 87 make over 60,000. 292 make over 50,000. So what we're doing is that we're giving bonuses to people that are above the median income. On top of that, we've got 10% unemployment in the city of Wichita. So now, yeah, we're government employees. We've all got a paycheck every time. We've got health insurance. We've got all the benefits. And hey, we're going to step up to the trough and we're going to give ourselves bonuses on top of that. It's the optics of that is absolutely horrible. We're right in the middle of a pandemic. We've closed down bars, restaurants. We've got people that are out of work. But yeah, the government employees are going to step forward. On top of that, we just heard a briefing a minute ago that the county has spent $35 million on COVID expenses this year. Now, granted, that came out of CARES, but problem is we don't have any CARES money going forward for us right now. Unless the Congress passes something else, we don't know what the impact's going to be. But does that mean that our funding that we're going to have to spend for CARES next year goes down? Absolutely not. We're still going to have testing that we have to do. We're still going to have vaccinations we're going to have to do and other expenses. I think it's a slap in the face to our citizens. I think that if we wanted to do anything, one of the problems we had yesterday is we got briefed on EMS. And I am all for giving EMS a raise, but no, we're not looking at that. We're completely forgetting about EMS. And do I love our employees? Absolutely. Do I think that they're the greatest in the world? Absolutely. Every time that I speak, I try and tell everyone how much that I appreciate what our employees are doing. But every one of those employees have a paycheck coming in. Every one of those employees have health insurance and other benefits. We have 10% of our economy that doesn't have that. We have our median income is below where we're going to give a tremendous amount of money. I think that this is ill-advised. I don't think it's fiscally wise. I think it is an absolute mistake. So I've already heard other commissioners speak. I'm probably speaking as a lone dissenter on this, but I want to make sure that we do things that are fiscally correct for our community and that we are doing what our citizens elected us to do. And this is not what our citizens elected us to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll go back to the comment I made a minute ago. I think our employees need the help. They have unexpected costs right now with COVID going on, and cost of living alone is going up, and they have no increase planned for next year. I think that this is not as good as a raise would be, and I think they deserve a raise. But this is my opinion, what we can do. It's not what I would like, but it's what we can do. It's coming out of existing balances from our existing budget that's already been approved. This is out of ending balances that are. In years past, we've gave money to DOC, for example, to create a hangar for an airplane. We've done things in the past that have been end-of-year decisions. In my opinion, this comes out of each agency's budget. They have the money allocated. We have the authority to do so. Employees need the help. And I would rather see us do what we can. And with that, I would make a motion. again, manager, is it very clear exactly who we're talking about that would receive this? It's very crisp. We know exactly who would receive this. It's well-defined. Is that right?
Yes, sir, it is.
I don't have exactly that description, so I'm going to just refer to that particular set of employees, which is a majority of Sedgwick County organization, does not include electeds or contract employees, manager and his direct reports.
Correct.
I'm saying that correctly? And if there's any other, am I missing anything about that description?
I don't know that you said appointed. It's elected or appointed officials.
Elected or appointed, very good. So not including any of them. Do we know how many employees right now that would include total?
How many would be excluded?
How many would be included in that, in the, what's left over? About
We don't
2,500
have
or
that.
so?
It'd be the vast majority, 98%, 99% of the organization.
Very good. I make a motion, we would authorize a bonus of $400 per employee that's in that category. Thank you.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Hold on.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Well, Commissioner Glasscock was next.
Commissioner Cruz can ask her question, and then I'll follow
Commissioner
up.
Cruz, okay.
Okay. So clarify to me, that's what you're proposing to us, or has he increased it just now?
We had proposed 300.
300, right, okay. So I guess what I'd like to just mention is that this was proposed to us, when did you first bring this to us?
A month
ago. And at first, if you can remember correctly, it was not going to happen. We weren't even going to discuss it because we didn't have, it wasn't going to work out. Well, I think it's kind of disingenuous for Commissioner Howell to now propose more when he didn't even want to do it in the first place. And so I feel like that, that's what I have to say.
Okay, Commissioner Glasscock?
I know there'll be follow-up there, but I just wanted to take umbrage with some of the comments made previously as well. It was made in a negative sense that this bonus is going to government employees. I want to reiterate, this bonus is going to EMS workers, to firefighters, to corrections officers, to people on the street that are on the frontline workers. We just had our election commissioner come and say that her staff of 12, between the full-time and the full-time county employees, had worked an extra 3,522 hours of overtime. I just got done touring the jail facilities where those officers are working 80-plus hours a week. And so those are the government employees we're talking about that'll be benefited by this. This is money being reinvested in our local economy as well. And so hopefully we see the results of that in our community, and that these small businesses may have an increase in revenues because of the bonuses we're providing our employees that have been on the front lines for months as well. And so I want to be very clear that those are the government employees we're talking about. It is not the people sitting on this commission. It is not the people presenting us currently. It is the people on the front lines. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't want to have to debate this at the bench the way we are today. I think it's kind of missing the point here. Commissioner Cruz said yesterday it's better to retain an employee than it is to recruit an employee, and I completely agree with that. It is better for the taxpayers that we retain the staff that we have. They have the experience, and we have seen attrition that is much too high in a number of departments here in Sedgwick County. And that poses a constant problem to Sheena and HR to find people to fill those positions. And we spend a tremendous amount of money on training, for example, to bring these people up to speed and to do the things that they're supposed to do for the services of Sedgwick County. She used the word disingenuous. I don't think we discussed this at a public open meeting, but I guess I'll stand for evidence for that. But I'll tell you, I've always been a proponent of this. In fact, I was extremely disappointed. I met with you, manager, and Leo Lindsay numerous times over the last month talking about how much I was pushing for this bonus. Please validate me. Please validate me. I need to be validated because I was just told I was basically lying, which is not true. I've always been a fan, always been a proponent of this bonus. It needs to be done. So I'm not being disingenuous. I'm being very honest and transparent. and my advocacy for this. These employees need the help. And so I'll stand by my motion. By the way, just to be clear, it doesn't impact us personally. Commissioner Dennis says we're giving ourselves a bonus. It's not true. We're not getting the bonus. Folks that work for Sedgwick County will get the bonus, but not the electeds and not the manager and his team and the other people I've already mentioned. And again, this comes out of existing fund balances out of 2020 budget. So I think there's no reason for us not to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Glasscock.
I have two quick questions as well. Commissioner Dennis had read off who in our county makes above 50,000. How many individuals in our county staff make below 50,000? Do we have that number?
Sheena, I'll ask you. I have no, and maybe Commissioner Dennis could, I don't know if he got those from HR or.
1,721 make below 50,000. 716 make above 50,000.
So 1,700 individuals make below the 50,000. Okay. The second question that I have is, before I would entertain maybe seconding a motion, what would the financial impact be of the $300,000 or the $300 versus $400, just so we can reiterate that information as well, and would finance, if they feel comfortable asking, would they feel comfortable with the 400 versus the 300?
I'll have Lindsay come to the podium, and I also want to qualify that the bonus we're talking about, whether it's $300 or $400, is to full-time employees. The mechanism or the strategy for part-time employees would be half of whatever commission approves. I just want to make sure that that's clear. I don't know that it came out in my initial statement. So, Lindsay, let me have you do the 25% increase math on that.
Thankfully, I don't have to do the math. I brought it with me. So the total cost for $300, again, was the $901,000. For $400, it would be $1,201,924. And so that would be, a $300,000 almost precisely increase. I think when we had discussed various options before, we had looked at what the comfort level was. Actually, my original comfort level was even lower than this. This kind of got to the point where I was a little bit stretched, a lot based on some of those discussion points that Commissioner Dennis brought up, that we don't know what the future holds. But we thought that this was a way that was a way to be fiscally responsible, but also still try to do something for employees. As kind of a compromise measure. So. And
you still stand by, you'd feel more comfortable with the 300 than the 400?
I do,
yes.
but that I'm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you. Let me make it clear that when I was speaking, I was fully aware that the commission and all electeds were not part of this. So I wanted to correct what Commissioner Howell said about that. Obviously, this will pass 4-1 when it's all over with, but I have always prided myself to be fiscally conservative, to make sure that I'm doing what's best for the community. And I've always prided myself on thanking our employees, because they are the greatest employees that we have. But I just don't think that this is the right thing for us to do at this time. Next year, if we find out that everything is going great and we can turn it around, we'll figure out a method that we can help our employees. But to move forward into a new fiscal year that'll start on 1 January, spending anywhere from $900 to $1.2 million on something that is not going to be able to carry forward, that we won't be able to use it for any contingencies we've got because we've spent it. We know, and I am pretty sure that our manager and our CFO will tell us that we're probably going to end up having to go into deficit spending next year just to be able to afford the COVID. And if we don't get some kind of relief from the federal government that can fund this, it's just, and it's heartbreaking to tell the employees that we can't give them that pay raise. But again, if we could have targeted it, I think I could have supported it. But again, we got 716 employees making up over 100,000, and between 50 and 100,000, which is all above the median income in the city of Wichita. I just don't think now is the right time to do this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. I think it's sad that we're making something that should be good into something that is clouded. And when you talk about employees in this organization who are already under market value for what they make, $200, because essentially if we give out a $300 raise, it'll be $200 take home, is maybe food on the table or an extra present under the Christmas tree. I think it's important that we understand these small little things that we're doing for our employees really aren't enough, but at least it's something. And so I have to support Lindsay and what she has proposed. I believe that that's what I'll be doing.
Okay. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Chairman.
Can I just suggest that we try not to repeat everything? Everybody's talking in circles right now and saying the same thing and repeating themselves. So if you have something, let's add to it and let's move on. There's a motion that you've made and there's not been a second yet, but there might be. So if you have something to add, please.
I just wanted to say I do agree with Commissioner Dennis that I would have preferred this to be targeted for people who are lower on the pay scale. In fact, he will confirm with anyone, or I'll show it to anybody who wants to see it. I developed a spreadsheet that shows a formula that 40,000 and below would be a full $500 bonus, and at 60,000 and above would be zero. And between 40 and 60 would be a transition with a math equation, very simple. And I presented that to him as well as a proposal. The problem with that is our pay department and our finance department can't handle that type of a situation. It's too maybe next year we could do something like that, or if in the future that may be doable, but it's not doable this year. And there's constraints and reasons why we can't do that. And I accept that. I agree with Commissioner Dennis. I wish we could target the money to those on the lower end. I totally agree. It just can't be done. I wish we could get our EMS folks a raise. Commissioner Dennis just yesterday advocated that if someone brought him a resolution today to give him a huge pay increase, he would support that. I would too. But I also understand by talking to manager or through an email that also isn't something we can do right now. It's not possible. So there's constraints out there. This bonus is something we can do. And I know, Lindsay, you don't feel comfortable with the 400 as much as I do, but again, there's money in the budget to do it. So it comes down to, it's a $300,000 difference, but I would tell you this $300,000 will pay the taxes on the other $300. So a $400 bonus turns out to be about $300 at the end of the day. And if you want to give a $300 bonus, that's going to be about $200 or $225 at the end of the day. It just depends on what level you think is appropriate. I can tell you cost of living is going to be much more than that next year. And every one of our employees that's going to get this bonus, I guarantee you, has had expenses they didn't plan on this year. So everyone's hurting. And I just think that the fact that we have the money in the budget, we should do it. Thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I don't see a second, so I will make a motion. Thank you. I think the manager and the senior staff have done an incredible amount of work on this, trying to get it, all the reasons that were displayed by Tom. So I'll make a motion that we adopt a bonus of the employees as stated for $300 as presented by the manager.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Thank you again for all the work on that. Commissioners, we need to do an off-agenda item. I have a very important phone call that I need to make right now. I think I'm familiar with the off-agenda items as it relates to the letters, the two letters, federal letters we're talking about. So if it's all right with the commission, I'd like to hand the gavel to the Pro Tem, Commissioner Cruz, to run the remaining part of this meeting. I'll be back in a few minutes, potentially. But first of all, I'll make a motion to have an off-agenda item related to two federal letters that we want to present.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Don't see other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
And I apologize, I will vacate the gavel to Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Akeem.
Commissioner. Afternoon, sorry, Commissioners.
Yeah, it is afternoon, huh?
Akeem Ashford, Director of Communications. Just here to kind of present the letters of support. We've got two different versions. Kate's got the items to pull up on the screen as well as copies for you. Yesterday in our conversation, we talked about the Census 2020 letter. This letter is to ask our federal delegation to support legislation that would allow for a 90-day extension of reporting for Census 2020 data. That becomes important for us, especially here in Kansas and Sedgwick County, because of the rural parts of our community and just kind of gathering that data. So it would put through the end of March for that data to be tabulated and then turned over for reporting. That letter yesterday, you guys asked to have, the chairman asked to have all commissioners on that letter, which it now does on official letterhead. The version that we have for you today is just one representative of each of the separate letters that will go to our delegation in Washington, D.C. So I would ask that you approve that letter, and then we will move on to the second letter, which is our COVID CRF CARES funding for future support.
Thank you, Akeem. Commissioners, are there any questions regarding the first letter in regards to the census? I don't see any questions. I appreciate you putting this together so quickly, Akeem, so that we could get this out quickly. Manager or Mike, do you guys see any issues that we need to discuss?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, Akeem, I think this looks good to go. I wonder if we could go ahead and move on to our second letter of support.
Absolutely, Commissioner. The second letter of support, I kind of want to give you guys an update, if it's okay, if I can kind of do some of this in the legislative portion as well. And then we'll kind of get into the letter, and I think it's important to kind of help you guys frame what we're going to talk about in the actual letter. In conversations with our federal lobbyist, Jim, Congress yesterday, from the four corners, basically, they went into a session late yesterday afternoon to kind of talk about the relief aid package. There seems to be a lot of bipartisan support for that. The original number that was kind of thrown around was $908 billion. That has now been short down to $748 billion. The difference of about $160 billion happens because that does not include aid for state and local governments, unfortunately. And that's kind of what's being considered at this point. The Democrats have been said that they're going to refrain from pushing this forward to get some kind of relief before the Christmas holiday break. And they hope to take this back up after in January. So that's kind of the thought process behind this package. They want to get passed before Christmas. They hope to have that done by close of business today. Many are saying that if we don't, we probably won't have a package before that holiday break. So I'm really intently watching and speaking with our lobbyists to help kind of understand what's going on. As I mentioned, state and local government aid is not included in that aid package of $748 billion. The reason for the removal is the liability portion. And Mike, if he can kind of help explain that a little bit, but this is kind of that business protection from COVID-19 lawsuits overall. Mike, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
It's just protection, like you said, from liability.
Yes, sir. In the bill of the $748 billion, there is, however, support for agricultural, fishery, museums, and small businesses, to include public health departments, rural assistance, vaccine planning, as well as distribution and public transit. In the CARES Relief Fund, as we all know and commonly know as CRF, NACO on a call, they have set up a call this week at 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, to kind of talk about the specifics of kind of what they're hearing day to day. I was on that call yesterday, and NACO isn't sure that CRF, as I mentioned before, will be included, and that's that aid to state and local governments. But we're hopeful through letters like the one that we hope to send to our congressional reps that they will consider that. I think now we can kind of move into that letter. From our conversation yesterday, I basically took all of you all's thoughts and put it into bullet format with the help of Lindsay and several others to kind of give some background information within those specific bullet points. So we kind of condensed it down to the version that you see here. I sent that letter to you all yesterday before close of business, before I left the office. And I know there are some comments about rearrangement, that kind of thing, but I wanted to make sure that I regurgitated as much as I could from our conversation yesterday, and then we can make additional changes as you see fit.
Okay, thank you. Akeem, any questions from commissioners regarding the support for additional funding? I don't. Commissioner Glasscock?
No questions. I just wanted to thank you for, I think, the order that they were placed yesterday, and that was very reflective of the conversation that we had.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my only concern was just the order, I guess, so it's not that big of a deal. But when it comes to testing, I think that was a big deal, and the vaccination obviously is another one, and economic recovery, maybe putting those to the top of the list. But I think this is great. Again, you did it very quickly, so I appreciate the speed in which you put this together. Commissioner Dennis, are you good to go? Do you have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I'm ready to vote on it. Thank you.
Well, I will make a motion to send both of these letters. That's my motion, to send both of these letters.
Second.
Looks like there's been a motion and a second. Commissioner Howell?
Just for clarification, we're sending this to all of our federal delegations, so it would be Congressman Marshall's not really our delegation, but he's senator-elect.
Mm-hmm.
So we should send it to him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And our two existing senators and Congressman Estes, is that correct?
Absolutely,
Who's gonna
sir.
receive these?
And what we're going to do is, what I'm going to actually do today is we're going to send it electronically to their chiefs of staff, as well as we're going to send it snail mail, so they have it both ways. And then I'll also send it to our federal lobbyists to also hand deliver himself, as well as our local as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Madam Clerk, there has been a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
All right, Madam Clerk, next item.
Consent agenda.
Commissioners, Tom Stolz, County Manager, recommend approval of consent items I through S this afternoon.
Commissioner Howell, do you have a question?
Nope.
Okay, well, your light was still on. Okay. I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Items I through, sorry, my things are all I through S.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye. Madam Clerk, next item.
Legislative issues.
Akeem, welcome back.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so this is a continuation of our conversation before for the additional aid relief. Here locally, Senator Ty Masterson made committee chair assignments on Monday. He decided to split up the committee on local government, ethics, and elections into two separate. So there's going to be a committee on local government and then a committee on ethics and elections. This is important for us because here in Sedgwick County, we believe that 2 of our priority bills that are on our legislative platform will go to the local government committee. The Charter Commission bill that we're asking for, as well as a nuisance abatement bill. And for us here, we have a champion who is leading that local government committee, who's going to be Senator Carolyn McGinn, who will chair that committee. That is all the updates that I have for the legislative platform at this time. Stand for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions regarding our legislative issues? Okay. Madam Clerk, next item.
Other.
Anything for other? Commissioner Dennis, you have your microphone on. Do you have something you'd like to say?
Just want to let everyone know that I am well. I just was exposed to COVID all day Saturday, and with someone that tested positive. I'm fine. My wife's fine. But because of that, we're quarantined. So I appreciate everyone being able to allow me to meet through Zoom. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We are glad that you are well, and we are also glad you're quarantined so that you won't get as sick, my friend. But we're glad that you're feeling well, and thank you for clarifying why you were on Zoom today. I don't believe we have an executive session, and so it looks like that's the wrap up for the meeting unless there's anything else. Okay, we will stand adjourned.